Today, the workshop is about painting persimmons in an Asian format. And so, in order to paint in an Asian format, I'm going to be introducing you to some various Asian actually watercolor paints and different surfaces to work on, as well as Asian brushes, which are a little bit different than your typical watercolor brushes. However, you absolutely can use this is a regular watercolor brush. So you absolutely can use the regular watercolor brushes for this technique as well. And Wa and so I have a whole set of watercolor brushes here, as well as I have, just a ton of let's see, a ton of Asian brushes, this one, this one, this one, a whole bunch of them here. So the nice thing about the Asian brushes, y'all, is they're usually very cost effective when you go to buy them. And I even have right on my table right here, I have a huge container just full. Let me show you just a part of what's over here, just full of different Asian painting brushes. So that's just about a third of what's in that jar. There's tons of it. And you're also going to notice some of them have, see this brown hair, and then some of them have the white hair. Some of them have mixed hairs. So they do different things, right? Depending on what kind of hair is there. The funny thing is also with an Asian brush, sometimes they look like this, but when you put them in water, they get a nice point on them because of the kind of hair that they're made from. So don't worry if your brush looks like it's like that. Here's a big one that I use sometimes on my bigger pieces. See how it looks all splayed out? But when you get it wet, it's going to come to a nice point right there and let you do your typical watercolor and Asian watercolor type work. Now, let me show you the inspiration for tonight is persimmons. And here are some persimmons. This was my practice book, so here is, this is this is some of my practice right here. I like to work with black ink to kind of get the feel for the shape of whatever it is that I'm working on. And then I move into using colors so I can see how the colors react. This is watercolor paper. This is after practicing some, then this is a set that I did. This is 100% cotton watercolor paper. Let me show you. This is the Famui 100% watercolor paper notebook. I love this. It's a very portable size, and you can see it's like perfect for practicing in. I was practicing some flowers here. Beautiful paper with the 100% cotton paper. So this is the concept of what we're going to be doing today is using some ink, or if you don't have ink, don't worry, because this is my Asian ink, right? This is my what's called Sumi ink, Sumi. Don't worry if you don't have Sumi ink. An alternative is India ink. A lot of people will have India ink on hand, and if you don't have that, just use black watercolor, not to worry. Use whatever you have, but I am going to introduce you to my favorite types of Chinese and Japanese watercolors for this project. Okay. Now, what I've done in order to get ideas for, um, what do persimmons look like? I mean, I love eating persimmons, but I went out onto Pixabay, and these are some of the pictures from Pixabay, as well as some pictures of them in the trees. So those are some persimmons growing in the trees. This is where you can go to Pixabay. It's Pixabay. I'll have a link to it in the description of the video later tonight on YouTube. And there is another picture. My daughter took one of these pictures. It was either this picture or she took this picture. She was in Korea in November. And so I was like, hey, take some pictures of some persimmons for me because they were in season. They were nice and orange at the time. So that's what I do is I go to Pixabay and I get these kind of images that I then use as my reference images for doing, or you can just go to the store and buy a persimmon and use it as a still life, right? For that. Now, I have some other versions of it because I like to use rice paper. So this is an example of rice paper, or some people call it Juan paper, Xuan, Juan paper. And it's just an thin Asian paper. So here's the same painting, but on, you see how it's super thin rice paper. So I call this thin rice paper practice paper. But if you make a piece of artwork that you like say this one, I'm like, "Ooh, I like the way that turned out." Okay. Then what you can do is you can take that piece of artwork and you can put it onto a stiff backing. And then that stiff backing makes it easy for you to put the artwork into a mat and then into a frame. So, for instance, this is another one that I did, one of the ones in the trees, and you'll notice that I have attached it to, in this case, a piece of mixed media paper. And so the rice paper is sticking out over the edges, right? After it dries, then, and I'm going to show you later, bonus part of this workshop is I'm going to show you how I mount the paper like this on a thicker paper to make it easier to go ahead and put that into a mat and a frame. But you're usually going to end up with a little bit of rice paper hanging off the edges. So then you just cut that off. Here's one where I've already cut it off. And so this one is actually this, I liked this better to go into a square mat. So this is a 12 by 12 mat that has an 8 by 8 hole there, and then I was like, "Oh, okay. I like the way that that fits into the square with the 3 persimmons like that," right? This is rice paper mounted onto that mixed media paper. Now you can tell that it's like rice paper because I don't know if you can see it, but right here there's just a little ripple. Sometimes that happens when you're putting the rice paper down onto your background paper. That you know, wrinkles happen when you're working with rice paper. But now, besides rice paper, you can also use these exact same um, paints on watercolor paper. I like to do lots and lots and lots of practice on rice paper because rice paper is cheap, y'all. It's cheap. If you end up with something you like, you go, awesome, I'm going to mount that, right? And then it'll be available for you to put into a frame. But don't, uh, if you're not comfortable working on rice paper, you can absolutely work on watercolor paper. So this is a watercolor paper block. Again, it's by Famui. And what I do with this, so here you go. Hey, there you go. How did you make all those good colorings? They're asking over on YouTube. Hello, hello, everybody, also over on Whatnot. Um, it's a lot of practice, but I am going to show you for the folks over on YouTube who were asking the questions. I am going to show you. I'm actually going to go over top of the table in a few minutes, and I'm going to demonstrate for you. If you have some watercolors and some watercolor brushes, you may want to follow along. So this is a block, meaning that it's glued here, and glued here, and across the top, it's glued everywhere except where it says open. So right here, there's a little open area. And so I did this painting on the block. I love the blocks, especially if you're a beginner. Sometimes it can mess up your flow of painting if your paper is bending, right? So if you work on a watercolor block like this, it helps to hold your paper down and hold it flat. Then when you're finished, you can use a palette knife, a bread knife, or I have this thing called it's like a letter opener leaf. They call it a block leaf. And so right inside this little area right here, you're gonna find that one sheet. So you're gonna insert it so that it's just the one sheet. And then there it is like that. And then I'm going to go around. As I go around, I'm going to tilt it so that the blade is going down in the area in the direction that I am slicing. Because if it goes up or it's just even, sometimes you can tear the edges of the paper, which is really annoying after you've done all that work, right? So again, like that, and I am angling it because I'm going this way, I'm angling this end down. And there we go, like that. And then here, same thing, angling it. And then this side right here. Yay! And there's only a little bit left over here. And now we've got this piece can come right off. And look at how beautiful and flat it is. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. And this is 100% cotton paper. So, what you're going to notice between an artwork that's done on rice paper and an artwork that's done on watercolor paper is that the watercolor paper, the paint on the watercolor paint paper, it sits up on top of the paper because there's sizing in watercolor paper. And then you're going to end up with brighter colors here on watercolor paper. But when you're painting on rice paper, the colors are going to soak a little bit more into the paper, and so they're not going to be as bright. Okay, so I was using the same paint between this one, and you see how the one that's on watercolor paper is much brighter than the one that was on the rice paper, right? Actually, here's another one, exact same paints, y'all. Exact same paint, but you can see super bright, not so bright, right? Really bright on the watercolor paper, not so bright on the rice paper. But that's the nature of rice paper, okay? So don't fret. Like I said, I love the rice paper for a practice. Yes, let's practice. All right, let me set these aside. Um, so we might do something on this a little bit later. Hey there, flower gazer. Welcome in over on Whatnot. And like I said, welcome in to everybody that's over on YouTube. Thanks for popping in on your Super Bowl Sunday evening. And now there is a book that I like that I'm going to share with you that is I like this particular book about Chinese brush painting. It's small. You see how tiny it is? But it's so much fun, and I've done lots of the projects in here. I've used this book a lot, believe it or not, because I really like. Do you see on the cover, the artist is very loose in the way that he shows you how to do your stroke work with the Chinese brushes. The gentleman's name, I'm looking, Danny Han Lin Chen is the gentleman that wrote this book. And don't worry, I will have a link to it in the description of the video on YouTube for you tomorrow. And there are just so, I just love the way that he teaches and he shows you the brushes and he talks about the paper and he's going to recommend one particular kind of paint, um, which if you're going to do Chinese style painting on rice paper, it is one of the best paints to use for that. I'm going to show you a couple of different paints to use for that. I'm just looking to see where he talks about that. Hey, there was a particular page where he talks about the paint. Let's see here. There's the paper here. So when he on his page that says materials, right there, he's showing you the Marie's Chinese watercolors. That's what he recommends to use on the rice paper. And that I have a bunch of them. They come in tubes. So I have a bunch of it right here on my tray that I've used to do all of these paintings with. And you can see the colors on watercolor paper are nice and saturated right there. So the colors are, they do have a lot of pigment in them. I'm going to show you those watercolors right now. So it's the Marie's brand, Marie's, and it has the horse on it like this. And this is the tubes that I have, but you can also get it in the larger size pans. So oftentimes people will look at the Chinese or Japanese watercolor and they'll be like, "Why are they in such big pans. I'm going to show you what I mean. This is Japanese. You see the big pans right here? So that means they're much larger than a typical watercolor set that has little tiny pans in it. Well, the reason the pans are big is because the brushes generally are pretty big. Like, look at this brush. See how big that is? And so, in order to get into the pan and get the paint out, I need a large pan to get that from. And that's the other reason why I was using a tray like this. Um, you can just use a plate. You can use a paper plate as long as it has like a plastic on it, because this way I have plenty of room here where I can do my color mixing and all with a larger brush. Um, and it's easy. Let's see. I'm looking on YouTube. Waxod, yes, I remember you. He says, "I'll be back." Absolutely. And so that's the ones in the tray are me just squeezing them out of here, but you can buy the sets. So this is a set by a Japanese company called Yasutomo. But you're going to notice it says Yasutomo Sumie. So that's Sumi dash E. It's pronounced Sumie. So it's called Sumi watercolor set. So the Sumi paints are made to go on the rice paper. And why is that important? It is important. The reason it's important is when you paint on rice paper, if you want to mount that rice paper, you need your artwork to not bleed all over the place when it gets wet with the paste. So I'm gonna show you a little bit later. I'm just grabbing it right now. We're gonna be using a nori paste in order to mount our rice paper onto a heavier piece of paper. Well, nori paste, I use water with this to get it into a paste form, and which means it's wet. And normally, regular watercolor paints, will reactivate and smear with the wet. But if you use a sumi, so a sumi style of paint, the Sumi paint is made so that after it's fully dried, it has a small amount of glue in it that helps to keep the color on the paper. And then you can gently wet the back of the paper and lay it down with your nori paste onto a stiffer paper. And if you don't have that, if you use regular watercolor on rice paper and then you go to mount it, it smears, which I've had happen many times. So that's why in Mr. Chen's book, he recommends the Marie's watercolors. And like I said, it's the one with the horse on it, you see there. Now, Marie's does have regular watercolors, not the Sumi or not the Chinese painting type watercolors. And I'm going to show those to you so you know the difference. So this is the regular Marie's, and this just says Marie's watercolor. It does not say Marie's Chinese watercolor. Okay. This other box here says Marie Chinese watercolor. So I'm going to show you that. Or Chinese, it says Marie's Chinese painting color. You see that right there? That's what you want. You want a Sumi or a Chinese painting color, either one. Those are the ones that are going to grab onto the rice paper and hold on tight when you go to mount it. I still use these Marie's watercolors. I'm going to show you the difference. So this is the Chinese painting colors for Marie's. So there's a whole series of Chinese painting colors here. I was inspired to do the persimmons because they have really nice oranges right in here and some of the red. So these colors right here are excellent for doing the persimmons, and that's the Chinese painting colors. And then, oh, and this book is let me show you the cover of it. It's the painter's color diary for watercolors. So that's what it looks like on the front. And I love this. I love it for doing my swatching, my references. and because it's actually watercolor paper, so I'm doing the swatching on a 100% cotton watercolor paper. So this is the Marie's watercolor, regular watercolor. And so if you had a set like this, which there are also some nice colors for persimmon in here, then you could just use this on regular watercolor paper, the Marie's watercolor paints. But if you want to work on rice paper, I suggest that you get yourself the Chinese painting color or a Sumi A color like from the folks at Yasutomo. But I'll have links to all of this in the description of the video, not to worry. So we're going to be working with this one, and we're going to be working with these. Now this is Yasutomo's Sumie. There's another company called Kuretake, also Japanese, and they have you might have seen these before, but the large pans as well, and they call it Gansai Tambi. So Gansai Tambi is a type of the glue-based paint. So these Kuretake Gansai Tambi, I can also use interchangeably on rice paper. Oh, excuse me, rice paper. And then Yasutomo, the company that makes these, also make big ones. So this is my red ochre, and this is in a little ceramic tray like that. But that is, once this tray is empty, I can take paint from these tubes and I can put it in the tray. But you see how big the tray is? Again, that's so you can get your bigger brushes. Let me get a bigger brush. See, this one's even a little bit bigger. It's so you can comfortably get your big brushes in there and pull the paint out. Okay. So that's why I use these as well. And they even have the gold. So that's nice for a final little, oh, just throw a little bit of gold on there, right? But those are from Yasutomo, has those big round ones if you want to get those. If you're more comfortable working in paint that's in a big container like that. All right, let me put away these Marie's watercolors because we're not going to be using those right now. Let me just set those over there. Uh, Now, in terms of what am I going to mount these paintings on, um, what I mounted these few paintings on was a mixed media paper, which is much more economical price wise. But what I find is the weight of it is a little bit light. And so you see how I wrote in pencil on the back here? If I tried to use a pen, you would be able to see it through the paper. So I prefer to mount with a heavier paper, either a watercolor paper or my favorite is this bamboo mixed media because let's see, it is 125 pounds. So it's not quite 140 pounds, which a watercolor paper is, but you want a smooth paper to mount on. And this paper, which is the Hanamula bamboo paper, I like a lot because the trick with this one, there's glue on the top and there's glue on the bottom. So when I go to mount on here, this paper does not try to curl. And so that just helps the mounting process. We're going to do that later. We'll do the mounting after we do a painting or two. Let's do a couple of paintings, right? Now, one other thing, um, I lived in Taiwan for 7 years, and so I would do calligraphy a lot. My favorite, let me just move these out of the way for a moment. Oh, we need one more thing, and that is when you're working on rice paper, you need some sort of felt underneath it because the ink or the paint can go right through this. And so I just use a piece of black or gray felt underneath my rice paper. So, of course, if you're using watercolor paper, you don't have to do that. It's just the rice paper. So, what I was mentioning though is um, these are Japanese. These are the Pentel, um, what they call pocket brush pen. I love these because this is some of the calligraphy I did. That's what is it? She's And so that's your persimmons, like persimmons as more than one. And so I did that with this brush pen. Love the brush pen. Comes in a couple of different colors, and there you can see what the brush tip looks like. It's fantastic for going on top of. It doesn't work as well on watercolor paper because the watercolor paper is a little bit thirsty and it gives you more of a dry brush effect. That's kind of what I was getting here. If you look at the edges, they're a little bit choppy. But if you're on rice paper, and you're writing with that. Let me just grab a piece of rice paper. If you're on rice paper and you're using these brush pens, I'll show you when we get over the table. They work beautifully on the rice paper. So I do recommend if you're going to be painting on rice paper and you want to try writing on rice paper or making some drawing marks, maybe even drawing an initial outline, that these Pentel brush pens are out of sight. What is it? That's the four colors are black, gray, sepia and sanguine. This sanguine give you extra cartridges. Come here, sanguine. So when the sanguine gets empty, see the cartridge here? When you buy these pens, they give you extra cartridges with them. So, woohoo, if you see the sanguine, jump on it because that is a great color and they're not very readily available. Okay, so let's go over top of the table and start painting. Woohoo! We're gonna have some fun. Make sure you have plenty of water. I actually have 3 containers of water around me right now because we are going to be doing some black, working with some of the black ink first, because I like to take the black ink and use black and grays to work out the shape, right? And that way it helps build muscle memory with your hands before you get to color. And so I'm these are little these are for when you're eating sushi. They're little bowls to put your soy sauce in and your wasabi, and you lay your chopsticks across it. So they are like perfect for when I'm working with ink because you can put your brush across it like that. And so that we're going to put a little bit of ink in there in order to work with those. So it helps to have a little cup of some sort to put your Sumi ink in while we do the first exercise. And we're going to do the first exercise on watercolor paper, I mean, on rice paper. But if you don't have any, just use your watercolor paper, okay? All right. We're going to start with a little bit of the black ink, and we're going to do that on top of some rice paper. Now, before I put the rice paper down, this, like I said, it's called Sumi ink. It's black, but you know what? If you don't have Sumi ink, that's fine. In the paint set for Marie's, there is a tube of black right here. So you can just as easily use this tube of black to make your black paint, okay, for this exercise. I'm just going to squeeze a tiny bit of the Sumi in here. See, that's one reason why you use the black on the background, right? Is because if you're messing around with black ink, you usually end up getting black ink all over the place. So I'm just going to do a little bit because we're just going to do a quick warm up. Normally, I would spend an hour to an hour and a half doing a bunch of different, what I would call drills, warm ups, where I'm just trying different looks. You see here, like this look right there. I'm just trying to get a feel for what does a persimmon look like. So, and this is supposed to be fun and loose, and I may end up using 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 pieces um, of this rice paper. But you know what? It doesn't matter because rice paper's super cheap, y'all. Super cheap. You get like a pack of 100 like this, see, 100 sheets, and it's not expensive at all. Okay. So don't be afraid. Get yourself some of that rice paper and just go to town. Practice, practice, have fun. Part of painting is developing what's called muscle memory. So you want You know what? I'm going to move this out of the way for right now because we're just going to work with the black. So muscle memory is where you're holding the brush and you're working with the brush, and your body develops a memory between the brain and your hand and your brush for how that stroke is supposed to go. That way, when you go onto your watercolor paper or you go onto a heavier rice paper comes in different grades. And so this is a practice one. It's rather thin, but if I like the artwork, I mount it like I showed you earlier. So here are some of the pictures of persimmons. We're going to start with a single, like just a single persimmon. That's what I did here, right? I was like, okay, what are the basic elements of a persimmon? Like I said, this came off of Pixabay. So feel free to look on Pixabay right now and get yourself a persimmon image or just pull it up on your phone. And let me see if you can see that. You can't really. Okay. Maybe I'll move my black ink over here and put the persimmons here so that you can see them a little bit better. There you go. If you want to follow along. Now this is super dark right out of the bottle. It's thick and it's dark. I'm going to get my brush wet first. So this is an Asian style brush. This is the Famui number 8 round Asian brush. But you can also use, let me see, let me find one. A, I'm just looking for the right shape, right size. So this is a size 12 round, but you see how this is a regular watercolor brush and it's a size 12 round. And this is an Asian brush size 8. So you can see they're just about the same size. Okay. So anything like that, or even this one right here, that's what we're going to be working with. So first I get this wet. Actually, I need a paper towel in my hand. When you're watercoloring, you always need a paper towel, right? Okay. Another thing that I do is I will take one piece of the rice paper here and I'm creating a blotter, what I call a blotter paper. So let me get a piece of rice paper for my blotter. So as I'm painting with the blotters, I mean with the paint, oftentimes I need to blot off a little bit of the ink from the brush before I put it onto my paper. So the Asian papers, this rice paper has a rough side and a smooth side. So depending on the way that you like your artwork to look, you can determine which side you want to paint on. A lot of people, especially when you're beginning, I would suggest you paint on the smooth side. And later, when you get more comfortable with your strokes, you can switch to the more grainy side of the paper. So I'm going to put my blotter right here next to me because as I pick up the paint before I go onto the paper, I'll usually blot it to see how much see how dark it is and how much I have in my brush. So here I'm just making the brush the shape that I want it to be, right? There's plenty of water. It's a natural hair brush. So now I've got some nice black in there. See how I'm wiping it on the side. And then if I wanted to see how it's looking, I can put it on here. It's very dark right now. So I'm going to work on, you see how I had dark and then I added more water to my brush and I got this gray. So we're going to start with the dark right there. And just look at one of these and decide, what kind of uh, orientation you want for your piece. So I'm just going to work on the area here, like kind of the top area here, or even this. I can sort of imagine in my mind that it's sitting straight down, but I just want to get an idea. Okay, what does that look like on there, on the persimmon? And it doesn't have to be accurate, y'all. This is just relaxing and practicing, okay? And you can do it over and over and over again on your sheet. So I'm just gonna do this and then do a little bit more over here. Bring this one sort of this way and then a little bit more right here. It's okay to turn your brush around like that. Um, I should have left myself a little more space in the middle so I could put that little middle section there. Okay, then I'm going to add some water because I don't want it to be quite so black, right? Add some water. So now I have more water in it. And then that's a little bit more gray. All right, I may want it to be even a little bit more gray. Okay, let's add a little bit more water. So you're just adjusting how much water and how much, okay. So it's okay to get rid of some of the paint on this blotter, right? And then I'm going to bring this around. So I have some of it here. I have some of it here. One of the things with like Chinese and Japanese painting is usually they are they're trying to use as few strokes as possible to get the idea across. Now this is like when I first start painting, it's super black, which makes me a little bit nuts. It's like, ah, it's too much black, but it's okay. I'm just breaking it in. That this is why you practice first. Okay, so I went way too close together on these. So I'm just picking up a tiny bit more black. I'm going to do it again. So that's what we're doing. We're just experimenting. We're leaving a little more white space here this time. And then this one sort of comes this way. This one sort of comes out like that. And then in the center there, there's like sort of a little area like that, right? So I'm a little happier with that. And then picking up a little bit more paint and bringing it around like this. See, now the brush is getting a little bit drier, which I'm happier with the brush being a little bit drier. The more wet the brush is, the more the paint is going to spread. Do you see the spread on the first one? The body of the first one? Ah, that's where I'm like, wait, that is like too wet. But that's what happens when you first start out. You have to sort of prime your brush. And so basically, when I start out, I'm just looking, okay, what's the shape of this? And I'm trying to bring it with just a few brush strokes. Okay. So I'm still not happy with where it's going. So I'm grabbing a little bit more paint here. I just don't want it to be so sopping wet. I'm having a little bit too much bleed on there. So there's just like any kind of watercolor, you're constantly adjusting or uh, getting a feel for how much water do I have in my brush, right? And if I have too much water in my brush on rice paper, it's going to let you know right away because you see the soft, fuzzy edges right here, which it doesn't matter. It's okay if you have soft, fuzzy edges. It's just what is it that you're going for, right? Let's look at the other one over here, a different kind of persimmon. They're different shapes. So this one, I want to do this and I want to do this. So you're looking to limit your strokes if you can. That's one of the sort of one of the tenets of Asian painting is you really are looking to limit your strokes and enough to get the idea across. At least when it before I go to color. Once hey, Colored for a Cause, welcome in over on Whatnot. Um, so this is just getting a feel for moving the brush around. There is a little bit right there. Don't this is practice, so do not worry. Okay, I need to bring some more over here and a little more over here. Okay. When you use the brush on its side, you get something called dry brush. So you see those little tiny lines that are in there. I'm not going to start. If I had already been painting for an hour or two in this way earlier today, I wouldn't have to do all the practice. But if I'm starting out, if I'm essentially, just beginning a painting session, oh yeah, I have to do a bunch of warm-ups before I decide to go directly to a paper um, to get her done. Now, I was looking earlier on online, and I saw an artist who was doing persimmons, and it was so funny. I'm like, oh my gosh, you talk about simplified. This is what they did. They just sort of went like this, and then they put a little top on it, and then they just did that was their persimmon, and then they just did a whole line of them. Like there were a whole bunch of them. What made it a piece that showed up when I did a Google search is that the artist who did it was a famous artist. So, you get to put your once you've explored the concepts, you get to put your own spin on it. Your brushes and your hand are going to create a totally different look. But I like to look at the images like online, and then sort of work from there. So this one I like a lot, where you're looking at it from the top. I can see I'm going to need a little bit more water. See, now I'm beginning to get down to where I have a nice gray, and it's not too sopping. I don't have too much water in it. That's the trick with this. You don't want to have too much water, or maybe you do. Like if you're doing there's this book that I recommended. The author shows you how to do some chickens and some chicks. And when you're doing chicks, you want that fuzzy. You want it to look. You want their hair to look all fuzzy because they're little fuzzy chicks, right? And so when you're doing the chicks, you want a lot of water in your brush because you want this really cute sort of feathering on the edges of your paint so that it gives you the impression that it's soft. So it just depends on what you're trying to achieve, how much water to paint ratio you want in there when you're working on your rice paper. That's totally different when we work on watercolor paper, okay? The watercolor paper takes it completely differently. Okay, I'm going to do this one right here that's on the end. And so here, and now also when you work with an Asian brush, when I do Asian brush painting, I don't hold the brush like I would if I were doing more like a pencil. If I were doing regular watercolor with a regular watercolor brush. Let me see, where's one of my regular ones? Like this one. This is one of my Princeton Velvet Touch brushes that I use all the time. So I'm going to hold it more like a pencil, right, as I'm painting. But when you're holding an Asian brush, in order to get the kind of strokes we're looking for, it's a little bit different way that you hold the brush. So I'm not holding it like this over top of my middle finger. I'm putting my middle finger up here like this. Okay, so I'm holding it like this instead, and I'm tucking my pinky in and then doing it a little bit more on its side. But you see how my fingers are? Three fingers over here and the thumb over here controlling it. So, and I will tell you honestly, I've been doing this since I was a kid because I was raised in Taiwan and Korea, and I've had this kind of brush in my hand my whole life. So for me, it's very natural. But I just realized, uh-oh, I better tell you all what I'm doing with the brush. Because it is important how you hold the brush as you're doing this kind of brush painting. Okay, so let's do. I'm looking here, and then I'm sort of riffing off of that to create that top part. And then in the center, you have sort of a little area like this, and then you have a little stem in there. And then around the outside, so I'm just creating a almost a sort of what would you call that, outline, right? And you don't have to create an outline. You can actually go in with a stroke, but oftentimes I like to create an outline. Now, see, that's too black. Come on, it's too black. It needs to be more gray. So I just added more water because I'm like, no, 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 no. You're too dark. You need to be more gray. Okay. So I don't like that. But see, this is the idea. We're supposed to be experimenting. I'm going to do this one that's on its side. And so I've got a little bit of the this right here, like that. And then let's see. Can I get it gray? Will it come up gray? I don't know. I'm adding a little bit more water, but I don't want it to be too soaked. So what I do to get some of that water out is I'm pressing it up against the side. Hey there, simple treasures. Welcome in, welcome in. Pressing it up against the side there. And then I'm going to bring this down like this. So it kind of comes from about here. And it's not quite, it's a little bit more like that. Okay. So we're getting an idea, right? Now I can still see there's a lot of water in there because you see the spreading that's going on the edges. Like, no. And that's where this comes in, where you can tap off some of that in order to get it more dry. So let's try that again, where I'm bringing it around the side. There, that's better. There's less paint on there, and I like that. And then across the top here. So it just depends on, this is extreme dryness, and that's like wet. This is why we practice, because I want it somewhere in between. Another reason that I love doing this on rice paper, y'all, is because I like to do mixed media painting. And so after I'm finished with this, I will go back in here and I'll just make marks like this. Maybe I'll make little circles like this on top of the paper, right? And then this paper just becomes paper that I can tear and put into my mixed media artworks. All right. So if you do mixed media painting, if you like to do collage, I love to do collage. So I just will do my crazy mark making on here. And then the paper is, when it's dry and I go to um, glue it down onto something else, because I'm using Sumi ink, it's permanent when it's dry. Let's do some more of these. So none of my paper goes to waste. It just becomes collage fodder for me. That becomes a piece that I will use in collage, right? So that's another reason why I love the rice paper. Let's see if I can use up this little tiny section right here and kind of do one that's a little bit smaller. So let's do, uh, I want to try the one on its side again. Okay, good. I'm not as wet this time. That makes me much happier. And then, so now finally I have just the right amount of water and paint, I feel, in there. Isn't that crazy? Okay. Yeah, I'm much better condition now. And I want to leave some whiteness in there. So little happier with that. And this is where it really helps to have the rice paper, because then you're going to pull out more rice paper. Now let's try this with a watercolor brush. Why not? Instead of using the Asian brush, because you might have a little bit of this rice paper that you never knew what to do with. And then maybe you don't have any of these Asian brushes. So let's just try it with regular old watercolor brush. Let me see. Here's a nice one. This is a size 12. Let's get this wet. And it's okay with your watercolor brushes to use the Sumi ink. Just make sure that you um, wash it out right away, keep it wet, and then wash that ink out. And when I wash it out, I always use if I'm washing out Sumi ink, which is permanent when it's dry, I always will use the general soap. It's called the Masters soap. It's a brush soap. So I'll use a brush soap to be sure that that color is all out of there. Um, because this black is very persistent. It just wants to stay in there. Okay, so I'm using the same ink, but in this case, I'm using a watercolor brush so we can look at that and see how that works. Now, I can hold the watercolor brush like I normally would, or I can hold it like I would an Asian brush, right? Because they're both natural hair up here. So, whichever one. So, if you have a watercolor brush, just try holding it a little bit differently. Um, and let's see what this does for us. See, I'm kind of getting almost the same effect out of it. Just a slight bit more control. Okay, now I want it more gray, so I'm adding some more water into it. Ah, but I don't want it to be soaking. So here's the dabbing. What I'm doing is these kind of brushes, a good watercolor brush this size will hold a lot of water back here to feed the water down to the tip. So if I want it to be slightly drier, if I don't want it to be quite so wet, if I dab off some of that moisture that's back in the belly of the brush, we call it back here, then that can help to dry it out a little bit before you start working with it. Okay, so let's bring this, ah, and then let's bring this. And this is the darkest area over here. Yeah. See, these brushes, even though it's a watercolor brush, it just does not hold as much paint as the Asian brushes. All right, let me try it again. Right now, I'm being a little too thoughtful. It's like, no, 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 loosen up, darling. So let me move back to these. Huh. I constantly have to remind myself just to go for it and just try it, get loose, don't worry about it so much. And just look at the picture and be like, oh, okay, that's kind of what it looks like. Good, good, good. And then the center here kind of goes like this. And then it has this little bitty bit in the center. See, I'm much happier with that where I wasn't thinking about it so hard. Let's grab a little bit more paint here, but not too much. I still want it to be kind of gray. Okay, let's put a little bit here. Let's put a little bit here. And then it sort of comes like this. And then we've got a nice round section here. Ah, I'm much happier with that, where I'm just like, forget about it. Just loosen up, girly, girly, loosen. Now I'm using it on its side to get a little bit of dry brush going and spending a little bit more time. Okay, I'm much happier with that type of persimmon. Just a little bit looser. Yeah, yeah. See, it takes some time to get to the point where you feel like you're loosened up, right? Oh, let's use up the paint that we have here. I just put a little bit more water in the brush. Let's just use up what we have. We only have a little bit left here. So this is going to be a little wetter and a little more gray, but that's all right. Let's just play. And so I'm going to do this one kind of up on its side. And then this comes out over here. This sort of comes along here. I've got one that comes out like this. All right. See, play, play, play. I'm much happier when I play like this. So this is using a regular watercolor brush, but I'm holding it like I would my Asian brush. Okay. So you can definitely do this even if you have um, your watercolor brushes. Okay. Let's get a little bit more. See how I'm down to almost nothing left of the ink, and it's super light gray, which is awesome. I like that a lot. So let me do this. Oh, this comes way out here. And then this has sort of a little thing there. And then this comes down here. And this also has like a little thing here. Nice. Ah, I'm running out of paint. See there? Let's add just a little bit more water. See how much more paint we can get out of there. Because what I'm noticing is there was a lot of water here, so it's spreading, and there wasn't enough water here, and it's not spreading. So let's see if I go back in here and then I add a little bit more. Yee, fun. Okay, all righty. And let's add a little bit more into here and a little bit more into here. Cool. So those are beginning to get to where I'm more comfortable with the shape. Now let's take some watercolor paper. What happens when we do it on watercolor paper instead of rice paper? Hopefully, if you're at home and you have watercolor paper, hopefully you're practicing on watercolor paper. So here I've got some Canson XL watercolor paper. This is what we used last week, and I love it. It's 140 pounds. It's not 100% cotton, but I really don't mind. Okay, so here we have watercolor paper. You can use, let's try the paint out of the tube instead of the Sumi ink out of the bottle. Okay. Since I was saying you can definitely use the Chinese painting colors here. So let's just put a little bit of this black right in here, just like we were doing with the ink. There we go. Black watercolor. And but this is the Chinese paint, so it's going to act like the Sumi ink, okay? The difference is we don't have to put a piece of felt underneath the watercolor paper, right? Plus the watercolor paper is not going to absorb and give you those really fuzzy edges like the rice paper does, okay? Because this is a very wet brush. If I put it on here, you're going to notice see how it's giving me fuzzy, spready edges. Um, let's see what happens on on the watercolor paper. So here I'm going to do something similar again, holding the brush like an Asian stance. Totally different feel. And I like it though. I like the feel of it. See, there's not as much, it doesn't soak into the paper as much, so you have a little more control right there. You're not getting that crazy feathering that you would get with the other. Okay, let's just do this like that. Ooh, there's too much water in there. Okay, just playing with that. So I'm playing with this one right here. And we've got this, and then we've got this sort of comes here as well. So there's a little more, it's just so different. It's so different when you do it on watercolor paper. Yes, it is, which is fine. You can do it whichever way. Find the surface that works for you. So this is more of the black watercolor, Chinese watercolor. Okay. And then we're going to bring it down. Oh, and around this way. So there you go. Now, this ideally should be a little lighter, which means more water, more water, more water. Why don't we try doing the outside of the persimmon first and then do this part at the top? So I can do that. Let me bring this around. So I put a lot more water in it. I'm trying to get it to be a little bit gray. Okay, and just a little bit right there. More water, more water. I'm just doing this, so I'm getting a little bit more negative space going here. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Doing that part first and then coming in maybe with a little bit darker to do that. Let's start. Right now, I'm working on this one right here. Okay. And again, if you weren't here earlier, this is just an image from Pixabay. So you go to Pixabay, Pixabay, and you just type in Persimmons, and you'll find similar images to that. So here, this is a little bit darker. I got a little bit more of the black on there. Okay. Ooh, look. See, when you have natural hair brushes, they shed. Eep. Just like my doggies used to shed, right? So it is a-okay. Just every so often, one will come out of there. So I've basically painted around where this part would be. So now I'm coming in with a little bit darker and I'm just sort of filling in that area right there. And it's okay to leave some of the white, right? It's a-okay. And then around this way. There. Now there is just a little bit right here and a little bit more right there. Oh, I like that. So I like building the persimmon first and then coming in and building the top. That also works well. So this goes like this, and then there's the little bit in the center. Okay. Yay. I like that. I like doing it that way instead of doing the center and then trying to build the rest of it around there. Either way, right? But that's just to encourage you to do it. This would be positive, meaning you're starting in the middle and working out. This is negative, meaning that you're going around the outside and you're leaving white space to come back in and put um, something else in there. So I like the grays I'm getting out of this watercolor paper. You see the way that the paint is sitting on there? Now this is watercolor paint. And you may not even have Asian paint. You may have just regular old watercolors. That's fine. It'll work exactly the same way if you do this when you're working on the watercolor paper. Okay. You just put that in there. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to set this aside for a minute. I'm going to come back to this one. Uh-oh. I need my felt, right? If I don't have my felt underneath here, you see how the paint comes through the rice paper? Then it would be all over here. So this was using the Sumi ink. Let's use some of the Chinese paint and the regular watercolor brush. Okay, so the tube paint. Geez, I need a lot more water in that. Okay, so let's do that negative. I liked the negative, where I kind of build this, come around this way, bring it up this way, add a little bit more water in there to make it a little bit more gray. And there, just a touch there, a little bit more in here. So I like using a brush on the side, whether it's the Chinese brush or even a watercolor brush, because I like that sort of the brushy, strokey shape of that. Okay, let's get a little bit more paint on there. I hope that y'all are at home are trying this with a little bit of paint. Hey, if you don't have black paint, use whatever color paint you have. It's the same concept and technique, right? Okay, so now I'm coming in here. I have that little bit of negative space that I can play with. And I'm coming along here. And I'm doing some here. I want to maintain some of that circle in the middle there. So I'm sort of going outside that. All right. Well, that's a little bit dark on the outline, right? More water. Oh my goodness. More water, more water. Let's get that gray going. You can actually buy gray paint, by the way. I don't know if you're familiar with that. There's a neutral tint is a nice gray paint, or if you have a white paint. Let's see, I have a little bit of this is what I use with a dip pen, but it's a permanent white. So if I wanted to, oh, look at me. Did I get it on my clothes? I usually get it on my clothes. Um, so I can take just a tiny bit of this white and a dropper like this, Yee, and I can just, there we go. Sorry, how the Russian I am. I could just put a drop of white ink in there. That's a white permanent, what's called document ink, and then I can get a gray. It's like, woo! So now I have a little gray on one side and I have the black on the other side. Let's try that. There we go. So now I've got the gray. Let's use the gray. I have a lot of water in my brush right here, and I'm going to bring it around and up. And then, so this is the gray. More water, more water. Let's bring this around here, this a little bit more around here, and some of that. We want to leave it a little bit lighter up here. Okay, so that was the gray. Now let's get some of the black and try to do some of the negative. Ah, come on, brush. There's another one. Um, okay, that's that part. So at least we've got a little bit of difference between the gray and the black. There we go. And then we have a little bit here and there. So it's a little bit different, different look using that little bit of white. Think I like use adding more water to get my gray by just having a little less paint in there. Ah, there's so much like you see why you have to practice because you're practicing, you're getting used to the brush that you're using and the amount of water versus ink in order to get the look that you want. Okay. So again, let's just go like this, a little bit down here. I'm doing this one right now, like that. I'm just bringing a little bit, just sort of playing there. Okay. And then we're going to bring a little bit darker and see what happens here on its side, like that. And then over this way. Yee, over here, a little bit there. There's a lot less water in here with the dark one. And then, oops, I'm just gonna sort of do this and then put a little bit right there. All right. So I'm loosening, 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 not quite where I want to be yet. Like I said, I would spend at least an hour loosening up. But we are going to move ahead, all right? Because I'm not going to hold you here for an hour while I practice. And let's put that aside, right? And that will become what? Collage paper later, right? Now there is something else that I want to practice, and that is the leaves, right? So some of the idea of the branches and the leaves here and the persimmons hanging out in there. So let's see, I think I have a smaller one here so that you can see it along with me. This one's cute. See how we have some persimmons and leaves there. So Let's do that on the watercolor paper for right now. I'm gonna switch back to my Asian brush because I'm like, "Ugh," I feel more comfortable with my Asian brush. Um, so let me get that one. Doing Asian painting, I really like the Asian style brushes. Actually, I'm gonna move to this one right here. Let's see. So this one just is you see how the hairs on this one are a little bit shorter? The hairs on this one are a little bit longer. This is actually my favorite one for doing this kind of work where it has, you see how much longer it is like that, right? So I like the longer one usually for doing this kind of work. Let's see. Yee. So let's do some leaves. We're going to use that same black watercolor. I have lots of water in there right now, which is fine. You know why? Because I'm on watercolor paper, so it's not going to just soak right in there. I want to do like sort of one of these branches, and this is where you're just going to sort of. Do you do characters? Nene asked. Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, one of the things I showed earlier was these incredible Pentel brush pens. They're Japanese and they make beautiful characters. Now, this is watercolor paper. It's not as easy to do it on watercolor paper. Let me get the rice paper right here. But I love using these to do characters. So where is my, I have a piece of paper here that had the characters for me. Well, here. So this is, I think it's Schutz, and it's that means persimmons, more than one. Just the shoot. I think it's sure. No, she is the persimmon. So let me. I have the characters up here, and I love doing it on rice paper. So I'm gonna do this. But this is a wonderful brush pen for doing this because it actually has ink in it. And so the ink really takes to the paper well, like that. And then we're going to come down and then we're going to do this one. So that is the character for persimmon. But if you mean more than one persimmon, then you add the onto the end, which is this right here. Oh, like Disney characters. No, nope. I don't do those like comic type characters. I don't paint those. Nope, I do not. Let's do this and then there we go. So there's the Chinese characters. Those I like to do. I don't do I grew up in Asia and I love doing this kind of Asian style painting, but it's usually birds and flowers and fruit and stuff like that. And then I'll look up what the characters are and I'll use my brush. So if I were to use my brush like this to do the characters, it would be like this. Oh, there's a lot of water in here. And then here, and then like that. So I would just build my characters like this, and that would be persimmons in Chinese characters. But here we go. Let's use this one right here. Let's use this brush. And so I'm dipping into here. I want to do a branch. So I like the persimmon branches. They sort of come down like this. And so I want it to be a little wider up here. And then I'm sort of varying my lifting. I bring it down, lift it a little bit, make a little nodule there because this is where our leaves are going to come out of. And the leaves, the reason that I like these big brushes is the way that you can get the shapes of the leaves and things here. So let's bring this one down and do one that's a little bit more. What I need to do is I need this one to be a little darker. More black, more black. This part right here. Okay. So this is using the black to kind of get a feel for how the leaves go, the blacks and the grays. A lot of the leaves are not facing directly toward you. Some of them do. So let's get this one right here that sort of faces directly in toward us. So this one's facing us. A little more up here. I'm just observing what I see in the picture and then painting them, the leaves. But a lot of the leaves are on their side. And then, of course, you're going to want to put a persimmon in there. So there's another little branch up here and right here. Oops. See, natural hair. So they do come out. It's okay. That's just Asian painting for you. So here we've got a leaf sticking out the top, and then right underneath it, we have a persimmon. Oh my gosh, here we go. So the persimmon's sort of on its side. We're going to do this, and then we're going to come over here and do this. So we've got a persimmon there, and we've got a little bit of the leaf up on top. So I like to do the practice on the leaves and the practice on the persimmons in the black ink first, just to get a feel for the size, the where they're going to be positioned, and then move on to the color. But right now, we're going to move on to color, okay? And we're going to start on rice paper, and then we're going to go to the watercolor paper. So the paint definitely sits differently on watercolor paper than it does on rice paper. I like them both. I like working with both. Of course, I'm warming up on the rice paper, but sometimes I like my warm ups and I'm like, okay, that's awesome. I love it. I want to keep it. And other times I'm like, that's horrible. And I just paint a bunch of scribble on top. And then that becomes, um, that becomes tearing up paper for doing my collage. So there are just a couple. This is the words, right? I think it's Shizu, and that is persimmons. And then we get a feel for the way that the branches go and the way that the leaves are going to go. That's just some excellent warm up right there on watercolor paper. All right, let's do some warm up with color now. Now I'm going to go back to my rice paper. Yeah. Ooh, there we are. Now, of course, I'm doing this up and down for you so that it'll stay in frame. But a lot of times when I'm painting, I will paint this way, sideways, like that, right? So that I can get a horizontal versus a vertical look to it. Okay, so right at the moment, we're done with the black. I'm going to set the black aside. Now I wanted to show you, I want to do like a branch, and I want to use this paint so I can show you the Yasutomo that comes like this, because we're using a big brush, right? So, oh, you know what? We're going to do no, we're going to start with the persimmons, then we're going to go to the branch. So let's do this one first, and then we're going to go to the ones that came out of the tubes. So this is the Yasutomo, and what I usually do is I will take a dropper, and I'll take clean water, and I just put drops of clean water in here because you need to get your paints juicy. You need to get them started. So a little bit of water in each one of these so that they will begin to get loose. Okay. Um, and remember how I said the nice big brush? Big brush. Yeah, so nice. Oh, I'm also going to put a little bit here on this one. So just a little bit of water there to get that one started. Oops, water. No, it's okay. I'm okay. So here in this one, I'm going to show you what the colors look like. So there's the colors for this one. This orange right here is really pretty. That would make good persimmons right there. Now, if you don't like having them in this little box, these are awesome because you can actually remove them. There you go. Hold on. Screwdriver. Good for a lot of things, right? See how you can remove it? Hmm. And sometimes when I'm painting, I'll actually hold it in my hand like this as I'm painting. I know it's kind of weird, but that's what I do sometimes. So just for right now, I'm going to do a persimmon or two. So we're going to work with the outside of the persimmon here that we were doing earlier. I'm not even looking at the picture. I'm just relaxing and playing. So that was the orange. Now let's do a little bit of this brown. I just want a little bit of the brown, not a lot, because I want to use a combination of brown and green. So I'm just going to do that little bit in the center here. And then let's come in with a little bit of green. Eh, there we go. Now I'm getting down to the bottom. You see how there's the bottom right there? Then you just use those tubes and you fill it back up. Okay, that's the beautiful thing about having the tubes. So then we did this. Ooh, see, this color is like crazy. Not a good color for this technique, but that's okay because it's a little too, let me show you. It's a little too artificial. Do you see that right there? So that's where having those little bowls comes in handy. Let me show you this other little bowl right here. Ah, don't. I'm going to put that one back in there. I put the orange one back in there. So this particular green is a little too artificial looking. So if you want to make it a little more olive, um, what color is this? That's like that's black. Okay. I'll tell you a secret. If you want an olive color, you mix black with yellow. So if I put a little bit of this yellow ochre, then I will get an olive color. Let me show you. Isn't that crazy? That's like perfect for doing leaves too, that color. Again, it's the black with the yellow ochre or the black with the yellow, depending on how bright you want it. So when you do the leaves, they're like perfect with this olive color. I love using that, um, especially if you're doing big, like fluffy leaves like this. Oh my gosh, it is awesome. Um, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this olive and I'm going to add a little bit of this like crazy bright green to it. And now you're going to start to see you're getting something that's a little more um, like a natural green. Here we go. Boop, boop, boop. So something that looks more, maybe a little more natural. If it's too light, you just grab a little bit of this brown, red, and you put it in there. Now it's a little bit darker. Okay. So that's how you adjust your greens. Another way, let's see. Hold on. I'm just going to use a paper towel and get this out of there. That's what's great about these. Yee. Okay. So let's say that I don't want stuff that's quite so olivey. So I will start with this like crazy looking green right there. Get some of that out of there. That's the thing. This tray doesn't have an area for mixing. So that's why I have these little sushi bowls. So I'm going to add to that green either a little bit of yellow, bright yellow, if I want it to be like a spring green. So here we go. You see that spring green right there? So if I put that here, you can see it's very springy. So if I do a leaf with that, that's going to be a very springtime sort of color. And if I want it to be a little bit darker, then I'll use a little bit of the yellow ochre in there, and then it gives you a more, um, a little more mature leaf there, right? Color like that. So it's super easy to mix your greens with these. Just the trick is if you want that olive, go with the black and either this yellow or this yellow right here. So if I take a tiny bit of black and throw it in there, and then I add just a little bit of, oop, let's add a little bit of this yellow right here. There you go. I have a beautiful, what looks like a beautiful natural green now. Thank you. Not that stuff. Ah, okay. Let's do that again then. And we've got like this. And then I've got one that sort of comes over this way. And then one that's over in this direction. Okay. So that looks a little bit better, right? That's much better than this like funky artificial green straight out of the pan. This is much nicer, much more natural looking. Now, if we're talking about a persimmon that's no longer on the tree, it's not going to be that green, is it? It's going to be a little more toward the brown. So that's where picking up some of the yellow ochre or picking up some of this really nice reddish color comes in. Dink. Let's get a little bit more of that in there. And then let me just do this center part right here with that. There we go. All right. So that's the center part. And then it's time to go back to the orange. Back to the orange. Now, when I do orange, okay, watch. Ba-doop, goodbye. I'm getting rid of that color. Because why? It's super easy for me to make it again, right? As long as you kind of know your color theory and what colors you can mix together, it you could just go back and forth mixing colors, okay? What I like to do to get the orange is not just have that brilliant orange that comes right out of the um, package. You can do that, but I like a little more nuance. Look, see, natural hair, it's coming out. It's all right. Don't fret. What I want to do is I want to add a little bit of this yellow ochre to it because I want to make it look a little more earthy, a little more natural. And if you want to pump it up a little bit, you just add a little bit of the bright yellow. Okay. So that's going to give me a color that looks more persimmon like, a little bit more persimmon like. So let's go around here. Oops, another hair. Don't fret. Just if there's a hair, pull it out. Okay. Don't go crazy. And then we're just carefully bringing it around. Now, see, that's a little too much. It needs more water in it. It's a little too, um, well, that's because we're on watercolor paper. I mean, on rice paper, right? So the interesting thing is when you add water to this, what you're going to notice because it's on rice paper, there's black back behind it. It's a little more, don't really notice exactly what it's going to look like until it's dry. Um, so you just have to get used to that. Okay, let's do this. I'm leaving a little bit of white space. It's okay. It's okay to leave a little bit of white space. So I'm much happier with this than I was with that. So this was straight out of the set, and this one is mixing different colors together, which is much better. Much better to do the mixing, I think. Now, we have the black in here, right? What can we add to the black to make it green? We can add some yellow, right? So I can go ahead and mix up some yellow here and have this ready to go. So let's take some of this yellow right here, mix it in with the black. Ooh, okay, that's a super dark. This one right here is a super dark green, which if I were doing bamboo, I'd be like, ooh, that's nice. But I want to add, now I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow ochre to make it a little more earthy, right? Oh, cool. Cool, cool, cool. So now I've got much more of a an earthy. So for me, that's more what it looks like with the dried top to this. The dried leaves look much more this color, but that's okay. Let's add a little bit of water to it, and I'm going to punch it up by adding just a little bit of this one. Yee! Just a little bit of that green so I can turn it just a little bit greener and a little bit more. It's still a little bit olivey. Okay, so I'm happier with that now. Let's look at that. Oof, that is still very olivey. Let's add some more yellow to it to bring it more green. There we go. Now we're getting a little more green. Not quite so dark. And a little more yellow. Because I'm like, no, I want it a little bit lighter than that. So what always happens to, okay, I'm going to show you what always happens to my paint. This always happens to my yellow. Do you see the yellow is full of green? That always happens to my paint because I'm often picking up blue and then picking up some yellow and it turns green. And then, yeah, so my yellow always has green in it. And you see my white there with all kinds of colors in it. It's just, it is what it is. That I can't help it. Okay, let's see how this looks now. A little bit better. Not quite there yet. It needs to be a little bit lighter. Boop, more yellow. Yes, my yellow is green. It's okay. Okay, we're getting a little closer. Closer, but you see I didn't waste that black. I'm just turning it into green. Okay, cool. Nice. Nice green. It just needs more water in it. It's a little too thick. Okay. I like it. I like it a lot. Those are some nice leaf colors. It's okay. That's a more army green, right? So it looks a little more natural. But that's kind of how I mix around and I mix my various colors. Let's um, let's go ahead onto watercolor paper now. Da! I always have to find a place to put that because if you put it right on top of something, it's going to end up possibly getting paint everywhere. Okay, let's go back to this one. Oh my goodness. I'm so happy with that right now. Let's see, how is it? It's dry. Okay. Let's Did you know that on watercolor paper you can also work on the back? So this 140-pound watercolor paper, I can also work on the back. And especially when I'm practicing like this, I just use the front and the back of the paper. All right. Right now, I'm going to grab some of this red ochre, it's called, because I want to use it for the branch, but it is a little bit light. So I'm going to dip into my other one and use just a tiny bit of black with it so I can kind of get a variation on my brush. So now I have a little bit of red ochre and a little bit of black. And to do these branches, so I kind of start out, it's a little bit thicker up here, right? So I'm going to start out on my side to get it a little bit thicker. And then I'm going to bring it down and I'm going to sort of lift it and twist it and be like, okay, there we go. And then that way you get little sections. Those sections are where your leaves and your persimmons are going to come from. Okay. Um, and then I might have another one over here, but it might be just a little bit thinner out here. Okay. Just play around with your pressure up and down. Okay, that looks fine. I like it. I like that for a branch. I'm just going to set this aside because we're really not going to need that. All right. Usually before I put the leaves in, I put the persimmons in because I'm going to work around the persimmons with the leaves. You could put some leaves in now, but I kind of like to put the persimmons in first. Now, this water is a mess. It's very green, okay, because I did so much color mixing with green. So I don't have a sink in my studio here on this side of the house. It's on the other side of the house. So this is just some, what is it? Lebni, a Lebni container. So I'm just going to pour that water in there. And I have a water bottle here so that I can get myself some fresh water. Let's go ahead and close that up. I will dump that out later. Yee. But that way I can just keep moving along without having to go to my sink, right? Get up and get out of here. Okay, so let's do this. And it's ready for some fresh water. Nice. New paper towel at this point. Okay. Eek. So let's see, I have some water here. Let's do that. All right, lovely, lovely. We have more water. All right. The colors are going to show up much more bold on this watercolor paper than they do on the rice paper. Okay. Um, so let's put a persimmon in here. I'm just looking at my picture right here. Let me see. Maybe there's a one of these other ones over here. It might be more what I want. That's kind of fun. Let me see. Let me see. Ooh, those are nice. I like these big leaves right here. They're different shapes. See how this is a little bit longer and these are more rounded? Doesn't matter. Let's use this one. Ooh. So just prop my picture up close to me so I can kind of see what I'm working on. Make sure I have a little bit of water in the brush. Usually, initially, I'll try to go a little bit lighter with the paint, and then I can always come in and add more. So here's the orange that I mixed, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. So I've got it, but it's a little less concentrated. And so right here, I'm going to put one of them, and it sort of goes along like this, and then it comes out and around, and then it comes up here, and then it comes around like this. I'm going to leave a little bit of area here for some yellow. Okay. It's okay to leave a little area for some yellow. So this needs to, they come down sort of, they have a little bit of a point right there at the bottom. And so there's that one. And then back here is another one. But instead of having it back there, maybe I want it back here. Right? That's the beauty of being an artist is we can change where it's going. Uh, okay, there's plenty of water in there because I want this to be more of an initial wash. And instead of it being over here, I'm gonna put it over here. So I'm just seeing the edge of it right here. And then it comes around this way. And there's actually going to be a leaf in the way there. And there's a branch in the way. Okay. So that's another one that's sort of pointing down that way, and it's going to come around back here, right? Around back there. If you've seen me paint before, you know that I like to leave a little bit of white space. See the white space between the branch and here? That's just me. You don't have to do that. You can try to bring it all the way up if you like. I find for me, I like there to be a little white space there. I don't know. It's my thing. Now this is already beginning to dry a little bit, so we're going to bring a little bit more of the color in. like this. So we have lighter areas and then we have areas that are running a little bit darker here. Okay. Try to do it in less strokes, not too many. Like, don't go stroke, 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 stroke like that. Okay. Try to do it with less strokes. Okay. Now I just flicked the tip of that and I got a drop over here. Most of the time, I just don't even worry about the drops. But if you are worried about the drops, you need to like stop right away, get some clean water. You can't do this on rice paper, by the way, only on the watercolor paper. But just with water, I put a little bit of water on it and then I'm able to lift it up. But you have to do it kind of right away. Okay. And it's just a flat brush. All right. Doesn't work on rice paper. So if you get drips on rice paper, keep moving. Keep it moving. Okay. Now I may come back to this and darken it a little bit more. This area up here, if you look here, you see all the beautiful sun on there. So I'm actually going to clean this out and grab a little bit of yellow, except, oh my gosh, my yellow has uh, green all over it, right? So at certain times, I just bite the bullet and I clean the green out like this, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to get to that yellow, but I don't want it to be all green. So periodically, I have to come in and I have to clean my yellow so that I can get at it. Come on, yellow. Okay, there we go. Now, an alternative to this bright yellow. I love this yellow. This is the Kuretake Gansai Tambi. And what I like about the Kuretake, remember this was a set of 12, so I bought it as a set of 12. But sometimes you don't want that like very lemony yellow. You want something that's warmer, right? Especially if the sun is shining on something. So Kuretake Gansai Tambi, this was the Yasutomo. Don't worry, I'll have links in the description of the video. The nice thing about the Kuretake, this is that was in here. It says Gansai Tambi, and there's this beautiful sunny yellow. So I actually bought just this sunny yellow, okay? I go to St. Louis Art Supply and I order the individual pans. So, freak, here's this one of the Kuretake. You see how much more warm this looks? If you look here, that's what the color looks like. So it's not quite so lemony. And it actually tells you on the back, it says cadmium yellow. And it has it in Chinese and Japanese. It has a number and it also has the color name. Yay! Thank you, Kuretake. So now I can reach in here and get a little bit of this yellow, which is a little bit warmer. The cadmium yellow is a little bit warmer. I want to be sure there's plenty of water on there. And I'm just washing it over here to give it the look of uh, the sun being on it, right? And this one over here, there was a tiny bit of sun on the edge of it. So let's just put a little bit right there. Okay. So that's called glazing, when you just come over with a little bit of the paint and you just sort of right over the top of everything. But this one, the cadmium yellow, is wonderful as a warm yellow. Okay, good. So we have a little bit of layering going there. And you're looking and going, but Tristina, that doesn't look like a persimmon yet. And you have to build layers. Come on. Even when I work on rice paper, I build lots of layers. Um, let's go ahead and do some of the leaves right now while that dries. You want to give it time to dry. And so here's that beautiful green, this is what I call a complex green. In other words, it wasn't just pull green out of the palette and use it. Let me show you a green here. You see these ones that I picked out individually from Kuretake. There's a green there, and there's a green there, forest green, and I forget what, sap green, I think. I could just take it right out of here and be like, okay, that's my green. That would not be a complex color, that would just be a single color. This one is a very complex color, and as it dries, it separates into different colors. But let me start with this one so I can show you the difference. Let me grab this one. This is the single color. Let me get this. So let me grab the yellow out of there, and then we can grab this green out of here. Come on, green, you can do it. It says sap green is that one. Okay. So even though I have some of the other green on there, I'm just going to go into the sap green with it. So I'll pick up a lot of the sap green right there. And then I want to look at the leaves, see how the leaves are going. There's actually a leaf that's coming out here, right out from where that is, like this. And then there's another little bit darker half of it. So let me get that other complex green there. There we go. There's one leaf. And it's okay to go back and forth even. There's another leaf that is coming from here, and it actually swoops like this, and then the leaf comes out this way. So I'm just looking at my picture and I'm getting cues from the picture as to what the leaves are looking like. Okay. So the direction that it's growing in, like that. All right. So that's kind of newer leaves. Then there's another one that is coming. Where is it? Where is it? There's another one that's actually over top of this, but I didn't account for one going over top of it. I'm going to make it go behind it instead. So it's going to come out over here. I'm going to lay it on its side and bring it like this. So now I've got a leaf that's coming out behind there. And if I imagine it coming over here, let's say maybe it came off of here and it went back this way behind there. Okay. Which means that some of this is green here. Okay, so that's the one that looks like it's back behind there. Since I didn't account, I'll show you in the picture. See how the leaf is coming over top of it? And I'm like, ah, instead of doing the leaf over top of it, I decided to do the branch over top of it. So I decided to put that leaf back behind it instead. Okay, plus we have this other little branch up here. So let's get a little bit of some leaves coming off of here. These, when you do these branches and you kind of do this stop motion like this, what you're doing is you're creating these little nodules. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there. That's where your leaves are going to come from usually. You have bunches of leaves oftentimes that come off of those little nodes. And so here, I'm going to bring a leaf here that comes up and then is going this direction over here. Okay, I need to get that a little bit sharper like that. So it is coming over there. Okay, that one goes that direction. And then this one, now I can wait for that to dry and then do another one right over top of it. Or I can sort of bring this one down and bring it over this way, sort of like that. It's okay if they run into each other. It does not matter. Like this one's running into that one. That's okay. And I'm going to actually make this a little bit wider. Okay, so we've got some fun leaves going on. There's also a leaf down here somewhere. So we're going to bring a leaf down this way, putting it on its side, just sort of rolling it down here. Of course, it's back behind, so you didn't see where it was coming from. That's okay. Ooh, they look so pretty against that. Let's put the sap green away and use some of the complex green, which is a little bit darker, and see what we get here. Let me make sure I move it up so you can see clearly. So now the complex green has a little bit deeper undertone. Okay, right there. So I'm going to bring a leaf this way. It's like it's coming from back behind here. Bring it. There's a little more water in here. That's okay though. So it's going to look like it's going back behind that leaf. Let's just swipe it like that. Okay. And then where else can we put one? Ah, there have to be more here. Let me add some of the dark green. So it's okay to add some of the dark here. I want this part to be dark. It gives your leaves a little bit more dimension if you can bring a little bit of that dark in there and another layer. So this one obviously is going to have a lot of dark in it because it's back behind that other one, back behind the persimmon. Same here. We're going to have some more dark right there, back behind the persimmon. That's okay. All right. Uh, Now I probably would take my time. I would put more leaves in. Another thing that you can do with the leaves, if you'll notice, some of the leaves have a little bit of a yellow and an orange tint to them because usually the persimmons are not ripe until the fall. So some of those leaves are beginning to go, um, they're beginning to get older. And so I can bring some yellow and just bring it right in. I can either do it right over top and glaze it like that, or I can actually create some yellow leaves and then deepen them with just a touch of the green. Let's try one of those. See why you need the big pans? Because if you have a big brush, it's so much easier to pick up paint. So much easier than trying to use a standard tiny watercolor like that. Okay, so where can we put a yellow leaf? Maybe there's a yellow leaf back behind here, like that. And we'll just sort of make it look like it goes back behind there, right? Right now, it's all yellow. Let's put another one. We have to balance that, right? So let's put another one over here somewhere. It's as though it's coming this way. So there's that one right there. And then what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to drop a little bit of that green in there so it'll sort of spread, but it still has that yellow look to it. And then I can also drop a little bit of the orange into it because they also get a little bit of orange going on them, right? So you can do that with strokes, you can do it with dots, all right? Just a way to create those leaves that are sort of a combination. All right. So one of the things here on the bottom of the persimmons is the bottom of the persimmons have a little, um, they have this little brown, you see that right there? Just a tiny little brown dot. So I'm not going to use this brush to do that. I'm going to use a tiny one. So yes, the Asian ones, they have small and then they have tiny. So it's up to you which one you're comfortable with. I think I'm going to use the tiny at this point because I really don't want a lot of paint coming off of it. I just want the little one. So normally you would do whatever your background is and you would come in last and do this. So I've got a little bit of that beautiful brown color right there. And I'm just going to make a little sort of little marks here because that's what they from the flower, that's what's sort of left there. Okay, so we've got that little bit of brown, and that's perfect with a little tiny Asian brush like this. Let's see. This to me, there's not enough complexity to that. I mean, it could be fine, but I feel like it needs a little bit more orange in there, my love. a little bit more orange. So I'm just getting some more water on the brush. Let's bring some more orange in here. Now I may want to darken a little bit more, so I can just bring a little bit more of that orange in here from here. Or I can always bring in like a tiny bit of red. I always like to do that, like the excitement of a tiny bit of that sort of magenta like, mix it in with the orange, and then that's the dark color, right? Because the color where it's the darkest is right in here. And so that way, and right over here. Now, if you go, that's like way too much, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Take your paper towel, use a clean area of it, and just pick some of it up. Pick a little bit of it up there, pick a little bit of it up there. If the edge is like too sharp, if you don't like that, just take plain water on your brush and do what we call soften the edges just with water. Okay? So that will give you an interesting edge to there instead of having it be a hard edge, okay? And I'm also going to put a little bit of that over here as well. So of course, we've got a little bit of darkness right here from this one. And I want to pick a little bit of it up. I don't want it to be quite so dark. And then I want to soften it with just plain water. So let's soften it, the edges of that, just with water. So we don't have like a hard edge. Instead, we have like this really cool sort of flowy edge. Okay, good. Unless you like the hard edge look, that's fine too. Now, I feel like it needs a little bit more orange up in here, even though if you look here, you see how that is there. I feel like I need just a little bit more. Not this dark though. So I'm going to get rid of some of the water there. And I'm going to pick up just what I have left in here that's a little bit of the light orange. There we go. And I have plenty of water in here too. So what I want to do is I want to sort of give it the impression that it is round, right? So I'm going to go from here up this way. That's going to help give us the impression that something is round. And I want to just bring this up a little bit more over here. There we go. Okay. So I'm feeling better about that. I feel like we need just a little more color over here, maybe a little more color in here. But this is the orange part. Okay. Now, right here, there's like there's a stem that comes down in here. So it's a little bit brownish, a little bit reddish right there, right? So I'm going to bring a little bit of this brown right here. Just a little bit though, not too much. I don't want it to be too much. And I've got like this right here. And then I kind of have a little bit of a leaf thing going back here, right? Because we have that edge, that part of the persimmon. There we go. Okay. So that kind of fills in that area a little bit. And then you're likely to have something like that here too. I don't see it in the picture, but I'm just sort of making it up. Okay? It's okay to make things up. Okay. There we go. So it gives you the impression that it's coming from, there's like a little, or I can just add one. There you go. Okay. So now we've got, this is watercolor paper. So the paint has sort of soaked into here differently than it would on rice paper, right? We're going to go to rice paper now. I really like what this leaf is doing. It looks more natural. It does have a natural look to it. Um, and so we're going to move this and we're going to do one in the rice paper. Where's my rice paper? We're working with these. That's the Marie's Chinese watercolor. So I had shown you earlier the colors in my book. Let me find my book here. Where is my color diary? Okay. Of course, everything is right here, but I tend to lose things pretty quick. Okay, so the color diary is not there. The color diary is not there. Okay, here it is. So these are the colors. This is 18 colors here. Marie's Chinese painting color. Love, love that as it dries, right? I think you're talking about this one right here. See, now I like the multiple layers that are going on in there. Love that. Thank you, though. Yeah, you don't always know what you're going to get, do you? So here again, the Marie's Chinese painting colors. And what I love in this set is see this color right here called Cinnabar? Love that color. That's what's right here. Oh, love that. Here, I like to turn it this way. And so that's the Cinnabar right there. And I love that color for persimmons, but you need the oranger and the redder to go with it because you kind of want to build that layering. Plus, you need some of this gamboge, which is that deep yellow. That's what's sitting right here, and some of the light yellow for making greens. There is a this cyanine, oh, phthalo blue. That's the color that's right here. This one is this viridian color right here. So there's the viridian. That's the one that looks artificial, but you have to mix it with other things in order to get it to look right. And that's why I like a tray like this because you see how I've been mixing colors in the middle. That's the best way for me to get the colors that I want. Plus, if there's too much color in the middle, I just wipe it with a paper towel and keep going. So I like this combination of colors right here because I'm in love with that cinnabar. That's where I was like, "Ooh, I have to paint persimmons because that cinnabar will be perfect for that." And then number 390, Eosin. I think that's this one right here. Let me just look at that. Which one? Nope, it's this one over here. So this one, number, yeah, 390 is you see this kind of dusty pinky rose. So that goes very well with the cinnabar and this vermilion to kind of give you the colors that you're looking for in the persimmons. Yes. Yes. Um, so the last one we did was a persimmon in the tree. Let's do one of these, which is not, oh my goodness. How gorgeous is that? Okay, I'm doing that one. I was just going to do the two persimmons next to each other, but there are two persimmons, but we have some leaves around it. So yay. Thank you, Pixabay. All right, so we've got the Eosin color right here. Um, what I'm going to do right now is I have to spray this because if you've left it for a little while, like right now it's dry. This is from painting the last couple days. So I'm just going to add a bunch of water here and that will help bring those back to life, right? But I'm going to supplement it. I'm going to add a little bit more from the tubes. Now, when you first get these colors, if you're using the Marie's colors, there's right here, this comes sealed, and you take this part and you puncture it, and that's how you get the paint out. Okay, so there's a little bit of the yellow there. We have plenty of the eosin. Let me see, maybe I'll put just a little bit more right there. And then I usually like to work fresh from the tubes. This is that gamboge. So right there. Um, let's see, the browns. We generally don't need much of the brown, but there's a burnt sienna and a burnt umber right there. So those work great. Let's see. This one is has looks like it has a little bit of white in it. And there there's no color name on the tube here. They might have them now. I bought these about, I don't know, a year and a half ago. It has a number. See where it says 3.99? So on the inside of this, it has the number. So you just look up 3.99 as vermilion right there. So I guess they figured they needed to have the US the US names, but this is that Cinnabar that to me, I mean, I use so much of the Cinnabar. I just kept adding it because I just love the Cinnabar. Okay, so I wanted to refresh those yellows and the reds. And if we need some of the other colors, the beautiful thing is we can just come and grab some of the other colors here. So that's working from the tubes. And when I'm working from the tubes, we have that artificial green, and then we have a light green, and that's it. I'll show you right here from this set. We have the artificial green, the Viridian, perfect for mixing. And then we have like this kind of minty green. So we're going to have to, just like with the other ones, we're going to have to mix our greens, right? Okay. Oh, I got water on there. Okay, we won't worry about that. Um, so I think since we're starting anew, shouldn't we have some fresh water? We should have some fresh water. Hold on just a minute, because I do like my clean water. Let's grab that right there. Throw that in there. There we go. So we can start with some clean. Awesome. Ugh. And lots of paper towels, y'all. Lots of paper towels. So what you're going to notice on the rice paper is that the colors are not as brilliant because they soak into the paper as opposed to sitting on top of the watercolor paper. So here with the watercolor paper, they're sitting on top of the paper, and so there's an intensity to the colors. When you're doing it on the rice paper, it does not have that same intensity. So let me show you these. I went over and over and over and over with paint in order to adjust the colors. But you can see they're not brilliant, right? They're more muted. So that's what you're going to get on the rice paper, at this rice paper. There are different rice papers, Yasutomo, that makes this group of paints right here, the Sumi colors. They make a gorgeous, what they call a sketch paper, and it's thicker than this and it's whiter than this. And so you get a little bit more punch out of the colors because remember that this is a little bit thinner. It's a little bit more of a practice paper. Okay. Let me just take a little bit more color from here and put that in there so that I have enough. Okay, so these are all nice and juicy now because you just spray them with water and give it a minute. Okay, so which brush are we going to use? I don't know. I have so many beautiful brushes. Um, okay, you see this cat's tongue brush? Um, I love a cat's tongue for doing the leaves and for doing the tops of those persimmons, but I might have to show you that separately. I don't know. That may be another time. Um, because normally I use that when I'm practicing, and we're past the practice phase, right? So let me see where we are here. Good, good, good. I think we'll just continue with the brush that I have right now. Wait a minute, where's the other one? This one right here. Okay, maybe we'll use this one. This is the Fumui size 8 round. Oh, look at that. It had black in it. Oh well, it's all right. My water's dirty. That didn't take long. Um, okay, so we're going to decide where do we want our actually the picture that I'm using, you see how this leaf right here sort of cuts into the persimmons? So I think I want to create a branch that comes down and then comes over. So leave myself some space here for these. And then I want to paint in this leaf, and then I'm going to put in the persimmons. Okay. So that I can place the persimmons where they need to be. So the first thing we're going to do is we're looking at a branch. So this is the burnt umber that I have here, and I'm going to put a little bit of the burnt sienna in with it. I always tend to mix the burnt sienna and the burnt umber to get the color that I want for a branch anyway. So we're going to bring the branch down here. I have a little bit of a break for some leaves. Another, we've got one of our persimmons here, and then we're just going to bring it here. Okay. Now you're going to notice, see how the edges are soft because there's a lot of water in this brush. If I wanted a sharper edge, then I have to use less water in the brush and more paint ratio like this. Okay. And I definitely want this to have sort of like a little node right there. Okay. So now we're going to put in this leaf right here. So I have got, let's get some green, right? Because right now I just have the viridian, which is that really weird color, some blue, and some of this bright yellow. So let's bring some bright yellow in, a little bit of the blue in, and then a little bit of the viridian in. And now I've got a nice green for leaves. So here, what we've got is we have a leaf that comes up and around and has a tip here, and then it comes up and around this way. Okay. And then it comes like this. And this part is much lighter. So we're going to have to wait to do this part over here until we get, or I can just dip into the yellow and get a lighter green, much lighter green, and then come across here with the lighter green. But you're going to see it's a lot, working on the rice paper, it's a lot different. It's less flexible for the layering on the rice paper. Okay, so that's one leaf right there. That's the one that's going to overlap. So let's take some of this gamboge, it's called, which is a deep yellow, and some of the cinnabar. Ooh, my favorite. So between the gamboge and the cinnabar, we can get a really nice sort of yellowy orange color there. And what we've got is this comes over like this, and then it comes down, and it comes up and around behind there. Okay. And then we're going to do this a little bit more here. Right now, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the vermilion, so it's a little bit brighter orange red. And I'm going to drop that around this part, around sort of the outside. You can layer with the rice paper, but it's a little trickier. It's a little trickier, okay, because I'm putting it on pretty wet, so we're gonna have to wait a little bit for that to soak into the paper. Now I've got to go back to a little bit more of the gamboge, so slightly yellower. And if it's not yellow enough, I can pick up a little bit of this other yellow, the brighter yellow. Okay, there we go. And then the other one is right here, butts up right next to it, and sort of comes down this way, over this way. Okay, this is the other one. And actually, this one should be just a little bit bigger because it's slightly closer to us. And I'm going to grab some of that cinnabar in there. So this is how I blend. I blend and mix the colors all the time right on the surface. And let's get a little bit more gamboge and yellow. and bring that up across here. All right. It's okay in the beginning as you're establishing where you want things to be. It's okay to leave some white space. Okay. Because you can always go back to that. You always go back to it. Okay. But it's completely different. This is like soaking wet right now. You see that? So you can use a blow dryer, a dryer. I have a craft tool, and you can use that to go in there and dry that off. Now, right around the outside here, because this is the lesser expensive rice paper, the water is bleeding out. Um, it just depends on the paint and how much pigment I had in there, whether that bleed is going to leave a halo or not. It might not. Um, if you're on a thicker rice paper, it's going to do that less. Okay, it's less likely to do that. All right, let's start looking at some other leaves now. There's a big leaf right behind the two of these. Let me do this. Pull this up a little bit. There we go. Okay. So I kind of put these freak too far down this way. Oh well, that's the way it is. That's why we're on practice paper, y'all. If I were on watercolor paper like this, then I could actually use a pencil and sort of sketch approximately where I wanted things to go. Um, I usually live dangerously and just paint it, but I could if I wanted to be a little more precise after experimenting like this and going, oh my gosh, I need these to be moved up that way, then I can make reference marks for myself if I need to. Let's do some more of these green leaves. The one back behind here is quite dark. So I'm going to use a lot of the blue. This is the phthalo blue, and a lot of the green, the viridian green, and then a bunch of the yellow. But that's not dark enough yet. More blue to get it darker. And if I really wanted it darker, I could just pick up a little bit of this burnt sienna and put that in there. There we go. Now I've got a little bit darker hue of green. There we go. And so right back behind here, I've got a nice big leaf back behind them. And we're going to bring this up here and then dua. I'm leaving some white space because I want to I want to put more layers in. So here I'm putting some of the dark blue and I'm bringing it just a little bit darker in there, that area. Okay. So it's okay to leave a little white space. You're going to come in later and put a lighter green in there. Okay. So there's a nice leaf right there. Then there's another dark leaf that comes up behind this one. I'm just looking at the picture, and you don't have to follow along with the picture, but I usually like to have some sort of reference. I showed you earlier where I put a persimmon, and then instead of putting the other persimmon where it was in the picture, I put it on the other side. So yeah, it's okay to do that. Let's get some dark green again. This is why I like this plate. See how I'm constantly mixing the colors. So here we've got another leaf that it comes right up here and then down like this, and then it comes back behind here. So there we are. Not quite like that. This is just up this way just a little bit more. Dark, 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 dark. Okay, there we go. So we have a couple of leaves going like that. And then we have some lighter leaves up here. So let's bring in more yellow. And if I need something to be a little more warm, I could bring in some of the gamboge yellow instead of using this bright yellow. So the gamboge is a little bit more of a sort of a warmer color, and it's giving me a warmer green. Let's get a little more blue in there so it's slightly darker. And my brush is losing hairs, but that's okay because these are natural hair brushes. It's like your doggy shedding all over your house, right? Okay, we've got another leaf that comes this way, back behind here, just behind it. And then we have another leaf that comes. I'm going to bring it, I'm going to bring the other leaf like right down in here because it's going to go off the edge because I didn't manage my space very well. Ah! That's okay. It's okay. I'll get over it. And then there's another leaf over here. That's why I left this empty space because there's some other leaves in this area that sort of come up and over like this. Let's bring this like that. It needs to be even a little bit bigger. There we go. There we are. Like that. So now we've got a couple of leaves back behind it. Oof. All right. So usually what I'll do at this point is I will bring in the heat because I need it to dry so I can layer it, right? So we're going to do this. But you can see when you do this Asian style painting, it's I try to keep my strokes to a minimum. That's one of the reasons why I use a bigger brush and then just rely on layering to give me the effects I'm looking for. Okay, so now I'm going to come in back over top of these persimmons. I'm looking at the picture and going, okay, I need to, I'm getting some of that cinnabar and just a little bit more gamboge. So it's slightly deeper color, not too thick though. I don't want it too thick. And I'm just going to bring it over here and bring a little bit more over here. Now it just dripped, but there's nothing I can do with it. If I'm on this kind of rice paper, nothing I can do there, okay? You just drips happen, and that is okay. All right, on this side, we've got nice and orange in the background right here. And then I want a little bit lighter, so I'm just going to grab the gamboge and whatever was left on my brush right in here. So it's a little bit lighter here. I just want it to come up just a little bit more. So I'm just using a few strokes and deepening the color, okay? Dink. There we go. And you kind of have to watch it dry to see like what is going on. All right, now I noticed that right underneath here, there's a little leaf right here. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of green that I already have on here. And I'm going to dab a little leaf in here. So there's a little leaf that sort of comes over and there. And then some of these leaves are sort of dappled, so they sort of have some spots on them. And then this one back here also has some spots on it. Just throwing some spots on there. And then what about this one over here? Yep, this one has some spots on it. So I'm just sort of throwing some spots on it, but you're not going to know exactly what they look like until it dries. It's a little bit more of a challenge on rice paper. Okay, let's work on, since I just added another layer to these, let's work on, you know what, before I work on that, I'm going to throw that little bit of, I'm going to use my tiny brush and I'm going to throw that little bit of darkness in the bottom right here. So we've just got this little bit right there. And then we even have a little bit right here. There we go. Okay. I love adding that little bitty bit at the end there. Okay. At this point, we need just a little bit more of the green in there. But down this direction, I'm going to make it a little bit lighter green. It's not going to be quite so dark. So I am using blue and this viridian, but then I'm going to use a bunch of the yellow and some of the gamboge. There we go. So it's a little bit lighter. I'm going to use just a little more viridian. Not too much viridian. Okay, so I'm just going to go from here and I'm adding a little bit more definition in there. And then over here, I'm adding a little more definition in here as well, especially right up next to here, over here. Let's see. These I'm going to I'm just going very lightly because I'm seeing some lines that come in here, sort of like this. That's like the back end of it. And then this one is coming up like this. So I'm just using that little bit of darker color that's on my brush here. I'm just giving a suggestion of a leaf, okay? This one right here is just a little bit of a suggestion here of the little bits coming like that, okay? So, and if you haven't guessed, I'm not a realist. I'm not trying to make it look exactly like the picture or the fruit. I'm just giving the impression of it. So I don't, you if you want to do perfectionism, photorealism, then you can find people that teach techniques for getting exactness, but that's not me. I prefer to do, um, the fact that this is very impressionist right here, and there are lots of little layers in there. And to me, that looks juicy. That I'm more comfortable with that. Okay, we're going to lay a little bit more warm yellow right in here because there's a little bit of sunshine shining through there. So it doesn't look like a light yellow right now. You have to wait for it to dry. And if it doesn't come up yellow enough, that's why I have a teeny tiny bit of white on here. So sometimes if you want, like I'm adding a little bit of white to the yellow. So if I want to really highlight this, then I just dropped in a little bit of the white together with the yellow. So when that dries, you'll have a little highlight right there. Okay. And let's get back here. Now I've got a little area right here where I have no color. So I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of a hint of green and throw that hint of green in there. Okay. And a little bit more here. Okay. Just work it, work it, work it, work it. This actually has a few little like brown spots on it. Again, not realism, but I do want to just add a little bit of a feel of that. Same over here, just to give it a little bit of a feel of sort of naturalness there. There was a little spot right in there. Cool. Couple of little spots in here, couple of little spots in here. So I'm just using up that little bit of sort of reddy brown that's on my brush right there. And this one, I think we had a few little spots in there. Yes. Okay. So it really does need to, come on, dry, dry. There we go. And in just a moment, I'm going to show you how I take one of these that's fully dry and I mount it on a heavier paper so that it can be put in a mat. That is the next thing. All right, good. And what happens is as this dries, it's like, oh my gosh, my colors are getting lighter, which is natural with watercolor, but it's like, now what do I do? You just layer some more if you feel like I just pushed something over. Okay, that's all right. Now, what you're going to find, this is what I was talking about with the rice paper. See how now that this is getting dry, the colors are getting lighter. And it's like, ugh. So I found that with rice paper, I needed to layer, let it dry, layer a little bit more, let it dry. Just keep doing that process until I was comfortable with where it was going. Now, with this one, I would spend more time. I'll work on these leaves a little bit more because you can see as it dried, they got really light here. So, which is okay. I just may want to play around with them a little bit more. These are almost where they need to be. Uh, with one of the pieces that I did, I took some of the white and I wanted to sort of bring some highlight in. So there's already some yellow here, but I'm just going to bring in a little bit of the highlight there of the white and then bring in a little bit of the white like right in here like this. So that's just a little bit of white just to give a hint and a suggestion. And I'll show you what it looks like once it's dry because this is going to take a while to dry. But I have one that I did that to already. Let me find it. It's the one that has the three. So do you see the little section of white here and the little section of white here? What I like about this white is it's not fully opaque. It's slightly transparent, so you can still see some of the color underneath it. And to me, that's helpful. It's just giving you a hint of the brightness without overtaking and being like, wow, in your face white. Okay, so that's how I would work this. Now, another thing that I like to do just because it's me. I like to do this. Um, I would take some of this fun orange right here. Why not? With a juicy brush. And then on the back of another brush here, I like I like doing the little speckles. Hee hee. That's kind of fun, right? And usually I'll do the speckles near the end. Um, but then now that the speckles are on, I'll use those speckles to go back in and work on the leaves. And try to get the leaves a little bit more the way I want them. Do any last minute little adjustments here. Like you see how this brown right here, it almost disappeared. Hey, Leanne Phoenix, welcome in, welcome in. So I would do that again. I would layer it again in order to get that brown to show up a little bit better, right? Um, But what I normally do is I will finish this before the next workshop, and then I'll show you what the finished piece looks like at the next workshop. Let me go ahead now then and show you how I mount it. Oh, thank you, Leanne. Leanne said, beautiful. Leanne, we're using this Marie's Chinese painting color, which works really well on uh, rice paper, but you still have to layer it. You still have to throw some layers in there. This is the image I was just working from. And so let me show you. This is a rice paper piece. And I'm like, oh, I like the way that turned out. So you have to let it dry completely and then you can mount it on a backing paper. So this is mounted on a backing paper in order to make it easier to throw it into a mat. So here is the mat like that. Because if you try to put your rice paper just directly into a mat, it's all crinkly and it's very difficult. It's a little more delicate than if it's attached to a back piece of paper. So I'm going to show you now what I do to attach it to a back piece of paper. I don't think you were here earlier, Leanne, when I was using those a different kind of Asian watercolor. I was using this Yasutomo. Um, what's it called? Yasutomo Sumi watercolors. And that's what I did this one. And this is on watercolor paper. So, what I was explaining is that when you work on watercolor paper, the paint, there's sizing in the watercolor paper, and the paint sits on top. So, the paint is going to be brighter if you're using it on watercolor paper than if you use it. So, same technique, but using it here on rice paper, you see how this is more muted. The colors are a lot lighter than they are when they're on the watercolor paper. So it just depends on, what you like. But what I like about the rice paper is practice. So you go practice, 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 practice till you get the look that you want, the placement that you want on everything. Hey, critter chops. And then you put it onto your watercolor paper. That's kind of the process that I like to use. But if I find a piece that I really like that I did on the rice paper, I can mount it, and that way I can still offer it. So, this, for instance, this is called Persimmon Trio, and it's available on Whatnot in the buy now area right now. So let me just move this one out of the way. Okay, let me move these out of the way. These are what we were looking at earlier. The vibrant colors of the watercolor paper. I know. But when you're practicing and you're getting muscle memory built up, it's good to do it on the rice paper just to get the strokes and then move to your watercolor paper. That's what I find. It's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper to do it on a bunch of rice paper than it is to do it on a lot of watercolor paper, especially if you're using good quality watercolor paper, like the 100% cotton or whatever. This is actually 100% cotton Fumui watercolor paper book. And what I did here is you see the black, I was practicing. So I did do some practice after I did rice paper practice. Then I came in and I used the 100% cotton paper watercolor and I practiced in black and then I practiced in color to get a feel for what I wanted to do. And then this is what I produced on the watercolor paper afterwards. But I had already done an hour of warm up on the on the rice paper before I did this. Okay, so that's I'm trying to let y'all in on the my process, but you can see, right? Because some people are like, "Why is your art so expensive?" When I'm in a gallery and I have big pieces and they're thousands of dollars, and it's like, well, and then I explain all about the process and the practice and the supplies and the all of that, and then they go, "Oh, okay." And I say, "And the gallery has to make money as well." Right? So this one I already cut the rice paper off the edge. It's mounted on mixed media paper. This one I did and more practice on rice paper, but I was like, "Ooh, I kind of like that. Okay, let me go ahead and put it on a piece of um, mixed media paper." And now I would take my scissors here. Come here, scissors, and I would cut the paper is 9 by 12, so I would just go in here and I would cut the rice paper off so that I'm left with only the part that is over top of the um, mixed media paper, right? Then it'll be 9 by 12 and it'll fit into my 11 by 14 mats just fine. So just like this. And that's exactly what I did with this other one, is I already trimmed it. Okay. So there's a little more to trim there. I'll trim that later, but that's how I do that. But I'm actually going to show you doing it. What I was explaining earlier is in order to do this mounting, you need to be using the Sumi inks or the Chinese painting tubes because this paint has, let me show you this one right here. This paint and the other Marie's, they have a kind of glue in them. So it's not just pigment and a normal watercolor that I'm used to working with by Holbein, Schmincke, Daniel Smith. Those watercolors have their binder is um, gum arabic, and gum arabic, when it gets wet, will reactivate. Which means if I put water on this, on the back of this, it's going to spread because the rice paper is very porous. So that's why you need to use a paint that has the glue base to it, which are the Sumi paints that we just used to create these. Um, so here's one that I did. And do you see how it's all crinkly? I am not going to take that and try to put that in a mat. Let me grab a mat here. Come here, mat. So if I try to put that in a mat, it's just very, it's very all crinkly along here. What I need to do is I need to mount it on a stiffer piece of paper. So I'm going to show you how I do that real quick like. And what I use to do that, okay, where did I put my nori paste? I had it out earlier. Come on, nori, it was right here. But there it is. So we're going to use this. It's called nori paste. It's a starch paste. Notice it's by Yasutomo, the same company that made this set right here, and the same company that sells these right here. Okay. So this is part of that whole type of painting, the Asian painting. And so this is a water soluble, acid free, slow drying paste. Let's see if it says what's in there. Oh, it says refrigerate after opening. I never do that, just so you know. Maybe it's better, but I've never done that. Maybe because I keep my house cool. Made in Japan. Use the paste sparingly. A little goes a long way. For perfectly flat results, press the item under a heavy object while the paste dries. So I'll show you how I do that. So I'm going to open this up. The nice thing is, you see the seal here? That's really nice. I like that. Okay. So there are a couple of papers, a couple of options. My favorite is to use this bamboo paper. So where it says bamboo mixed media paper, I have just found for me, this is my favorite paper. It's by Hanamola. And the reason is because, well, first of all, it's renewable. It's 90% bamboo fiber, 10% cotton, but it's still acid free. And the reason I like this paper is it has a very light texture to it. It's not perfectly flat. It's got a light texture and it's glued on the top and it's glued on the bottom. So as I'm working on it, it doesn't bow all over the place when it gets wet. Because when I put the nori paste on it, it's going to get a little bit wet. What would happen if you used colored paper behind the painting? Good question. I don't know because I've never tried. But I'm going to teach you the technique and then you can try it and report back. Let us know. Let us know how it goes. Now, those other two that I showed you a moment ago, I use this, which is a Fabriano mixed media paper, but this is only 108 pounds. And this one is 125 pounds. So it's a thicker paper. And so my recommendation is a paper like that. This, to me, after I did it, I was like, "Ooh, that is too light," because when I sign it on the back, it's possible that you may be able to see through it. If I used a pen, forget about it. You'd be able to see through it. So you want a thicker paper, I discovered, than this 108-pound mixed media paper. What I do like about this paper, though, is it's very smooth. So you see how smooth it is? That's why I wanted to try it. Um, so you may want to use something called a hot press watercolor paper, hot press. And the reason is because hot press paper is smooth. It's a watercolor paper, 140 pounds, but it's smooth. Okay. And so you may want to use that smooth hot press watercolor paper um, to attach it to. But in particular, I love this Hanamula because it's glued here and it helps hold the paper down while I work on it. Now you're going to notice that most of the rice papers are bigger than the paper. So you just want to determine where you want to place it on the paper there. But first things first, slow drying, right? I'm going to take this off of here. I need some clean water. So I have clean water right here. And what I find I have to do is I'm constantly dipping my brush. So you're going to use like a wide brush. This is like this one is to me a little too hard. I use this with a lot of when I'm scrubbing with acrylics and stuff, but it's a little bit too stiff. And I find when you use a stiff brush, you get a lot of lines. And I'm trying to create a smooth surface to put that onto, put the rice paper painting on top. Yes, good. I'm glad I'm getting your creative juices going, BNL. That's the idea. So here you see it's like a gummy paste. What I do is I get my brush really wet. So this is fresh water. So I get that really wet. Now, another thing that I like to do to help this move around is I just give just a light spray on the water. This is a water that can take the spray, so it's fine. And so if the paper is a little bit moist, it helps the paste to go down. Right, there we go. So it's just moist. You're going to notice it's not bowing all over the place because it's glued on each side. Hallelujah. Um, if you do that with a regular watercolor paper, like from a pad that's not glued on both sides, then then I do not spray it with water first because otherwise it bows and then you're left with oh my gosh. So I'm diving in here and getting a bunch of the paste on there. See there? Eee! And then I'm going to put the paste out on the paper. So I want all the paper to have paste on it, but I also want it to be a very thin coat. But I want it to stay moist. That's why it helps if the paper's moist. Here there was a little spot on there. I'm like, oh no, no, no. Whatever spots, if they're little like there's a little black spot right there, that will show through the rice paper, and that makes me nuts. I hate when that happens. So I always make sure if there are any little imperfections that come out, maybe from my brush or whatever, um, that I pick them up. I get it out of there because it will show through the rice paper. There's another little bit right there. So we're going to coat this with, all right. So sometimes as I'm doing it, I will take my brush and dip my brush. If it feels like right now it's starting to get a little bit draggy, so I'll just put my brush in some water there so that to make it flow better. So I'm covering this whole piece of Hanamula bamboo mixed media paper. More water, more paste. Oh, come on, paste. You can do it. So like this. Whoa. All right. More paste, more paste. So you see, that's why I buy the big paste. The paste does come in smaller sizes, but if you're doing this size, which is like the 9 by 12 size, you're going to go through it pretty quickly. So there we go. There's a lot more I have to get over in this corner over here. So I'm looking at it in the light to be sure that I'm covering everything all the way out to the edges. And what'll happen is when you get to this side will have dried a little bit. So then I go back over it to be sure that everything is basically moist. There aren't lumps. Okay, trying to smooth it. Oh, there's a little something something under there. So got to get that out of there. All right, this corner needs a little extra TLC right now because it's a little bit dried. So I'm just dipping in and getting a little bit more water so that I'm sure that everything is nice and moist. And I've got starch paste everywhere. It's smooth. I don't have any little bits underneath there. Okay, cool. Now what I'm going to do, and then I close this up right away because I don't want this to get dry. There we go. Put that. Now what I'm going to do, so this is nice and if you put your finger on there, it's nice and moist. Just to be sure, like if I were working on a bigger sheet, I would have to work in sections and then, oops, come back here. All right, let's smooth that back out. The nice thing is this is removable with water. So if you get it on anything, like I just got it on my bottle, it's not a big deal. Okay, so now I'm just going to give this a light mist to be sure everything is nice and moist. And then I'm going to be using this to smooth it. Boop, boop, boop. Once I put the, oh, that would freak me out. There's a little teeny tiny hair right there. Okay, that would have made me nutso if that stayed on there. No, we cannot have little hairs on there. Okay, cool. Um, we're going to use two other things. We're going to use this. This is a catalyst wedge. You could use a brayer if you have a rolling brayer. And the other thing that we definitely have to have is a piece of wax paper that is a little bit bigger than the size that we're working on. Okay. And I see something just dropped onto there. It's okay. Like this stays wet. So that's the good news. Got it. Got it off of there. Now what we're going to do, so I have this ready to go. That's the wax paper. And I'm going to take this and I need it to relax. I need the paper to relax because you see all the wrinkles that are in it. I need the wrinkles to relax, y'all. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to lightly spray it with the mist it with the water. See, this is where I'm saying if you were not using Sumi ink paint or the Chinese colors, what would happen? It's possible that it could start to run all over the place. Right? This way, that paint is locked into the rice paper and it is not going to run. Hallelujah. And that helps to relax the paper so that then we can do this. So I'm holding it on the ends. Oh, nice. And then you're going to look at where do I want to put it here on the paper and from the center, right? This helps if you have two people, actually. It makes it a little bit easier, but I'm just going to hold this right here. And you know what? I'm just going to gently, 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 gently let it down and smooth it, smooth it, smooth it. Eh. See, the nice thing is I can pull it up just a little bit. Okay. See, I would have somebody hold this part while I went over here and I smooth out this part. Come on, wax paper, go in there. Okay. So this is where you're going to take your wax paper and you're going to use your catalyst wedge. I think I'm just going to lay it out. And then if I need to, I'll pull it back up. Starting from the center, you go out, right? So starting from the center, I move out. Sometimes, y'all, you get a wrinkle. It is what it is. Like, see, there's a little wrinkle right here. And I'm like, okay, that's making me nuts. So gently, just going to gently pull it up. And then using the wax paper, I'm going to gently roll around. I guess if your fingers were clean, you could just use your fingers, but I usually end up using the What I find is if you use your fingers, the moisture from your fingers will cause the paint sometimes to come up just a little bit. Okay, so there's a tiny little wrinkle there, but you know what? When you do this process, sometimes wrinkles happen. So, okay, let's see here. And then we'll come out here. So you get it the best that you can. When you mount, sometimes you're going to end up with wrinkles. If you have two people, like I said, and you can do one half at a time instead of releasing the whole thing, it's a lot easier to do it without getting wrinkles all over it. Okay, so there was that. Nice. Now, sometimes your color will come out on here, like there's a little bit of orange here. So I'm actually going to flip it over because if I keep going, I see there's a tiny bit of orange that's getting here. So I want to lift it up. Let's lift this up just a little bit. And I'm going to flip this over so I have a fresh piece. I don't have any green and I don't have any orange on there. And I can begin to bring it out like this. Okay. So there's a tiny bit of green and a tiny bit of orange released onto the wax paper, but I flipped it over. I'm keeping an eye on it. So a tiny bit of it released, but not very much. Okay. Enough that it could go onto the piece if you weren't paying attention. Okay, let's do this part right here. There's just like a little tiny. All right. I would say that's pretty darn good, y'all. Pretty darn good. Let's get just a little bit more down here. Okay, lovely. Nice. There's just a tiny, tiny bit right there. Okay. So you don't want to be going all over this with your fingers because you will smudge it. Okay. It will smudge, but you notice that for the most part, it stayed in place, right? There's just a tiny bit that I moved it around a little bit. I moved this around a little bit too much. And so I'm going to show you there's a tiny bit right there, just a tiny little bit of orange that transferred onto there. There's nothing you can do about it. Just leave it, move along. It's fine. It's fine. All right. It's going to happen. But for the most part, there's only one teeny tiny little right on the white right there. There's a teeny tiny little wrinkle, but it's so small that you'd have to really be up close looking at it in order to see it. Okay, so that is how I mount it. Then what I do, um, the nori folks suggest that you put it uh, between books, but I don't like to do that. I like to let it dry, and then if it's curled, I spray the back. So you see how this is a little bit curled? It's actually not that bad. I've already had this underneath books, but I let it dry and then I put wax paper on the top and I put it between heavy like pads of paper, throw some books on top of it so that it's beautifully flat, right? It's beautifully flat. Um, if for some reason you want to get rid of all, I mean, that is fine, right? That's fine. There's only the tiny little bit there, but everything is flat. So that one is good. This one, like I said, there was just that little tiny bit of wrinkle right here, but I'm like, okay, we're just going to live with the wrinkle. There's a tiny little wrinkle down here too. We're just going to live with the wrinkle. Okay. Actually, the better thing to use than wax paper to put on it and then put it under books is to use parchment paper. So if you have parchment paper like what you use when you're cooking, that's um that's a little bit better to put on top of it and then put your books over top of it. Okay? But that's how you get it mounted onto another kind of a harder backing and then it'll be ready to put into a mat. Now, right now, the colors are a little saturated from the water, right? But once it dries, it'll go back to being a little less saturated. And then here is if I were to put it into a mat. Oh, there you go. It looks so nice. I like that. I like it in the mat, right? But in order to put it in the mat and keep it flat, you need to do that mounting process, which just takes that little bit of extra work. I do so many of these on the rice paper you were seeing that. Oh, thank you so much, BNL. I appreciate your compliment. That, half of them just get trashed, because believe it or not, paint is cheap and this rice paper is cheap. Okay. When you're painting this way. So, do not worry about that. This is another one that I did on the watercolor paper. So you see here, the thing with the watercolor paper is that I positioned it a little bit too low. And so I will go ahead and bring it up the next time I do it. This one is called, oh, I didn't name it yet, but this one's already in the bin, the buy it now. And it would come like this. So I would put it in a mat and it would look something like that, right? When I mat these, I give my customers a choice of a black mat or a white mat. But I'm always thinking ahead as I'm painting, okay, what kind of mat am I going to put around this, right? But isn't that fun? I love playing with the Asian paints and on rice paper and on watercolor paper. They're fabulous. I definitely suggest you give them a try. Um, let me show you this one other. Thank you so much, whimsical birdie. This is the Chinese character for Persimmons. So let me put this over here. And I think I showed some folks earlier, but I'll just use one of these colors to do it. Why not? And I'll do it on one of these practice sheets. Let me get a practice sheet of watercolor paper. Oh, I'm sorry, rice paper. All right, where did I put my rice paper? I'm only right here, so it has to be here somewhere. There you go. So before, a lot of times I will put Chinese characters on my paintings, on my on these Asian watercolor paintings. And so let me get the rice paper. There it is. Again, before I paint on the final piece, I have to practice, right? Another reason I have to practice is I try different brushes to see which brush I'm going to like better. Um, which shape or size of brush am I going to like better? So let's, for instance, take, ooh, no, I know. I have these beautiful calligraphy brushes, beautiful Chinese calligraphy brushes. These are Famui, and you get that in water right there. And then let's put some paint on there. And so, like I showed you before, I hold it like the way that I would paint for Asian painting. All right, you. It's like too wet. It's saying, come on, I'm too wet. Okay. So then I look at the character and I go, okay. And I have done this since I was a kid, by the way. I grew up in Asia. And so I love painting characters. And some people get a little bit intimidated by the characters. I'm like, don't worry about it. Um, I can show you, I've done classes before where I showed you how to do the characters. So that is persimmon, singular. And then if you want it to mean persimmon as in many persimmons, you add this character, which is zu, zu, and comes like that. So that would be persimmons. So sometimes I write a poem, I'll look up a poem in Chinese calligraphy, and then I'll practice the poem on the rice paper like this before I go on to the painting. So for instance, with this one right here that we were just working on, so after I would have the painting done, I would determine, okay, how am I going to mount this? That brush really, oh my goodness, BNL. This is goat hair, it's called. These are they're mixed goat hair brushes, and they're the best. That's why a lot of the brushes that I have here are goat hair, goat hair. These are what I have in front of me. I have tons of Asian brushes in front of me, all different sizes, goat hair, right? And goat hair, wolf's hair. Look, wolf's hair. The funny thing is, look at that sucker. See how like fluffy and crazy it looks? It looks ridiculous. But if you put it in water and you swish it around and it gets the water going in it, then you can work the tip so it's more like that. Now this gives you very wide, sort of broad strokes. When I work with this, I'm working on a much larger piece, right? And it tends to, let's say I'm doing a pine tree, and so I'm working the base of the pine tree, and so it just gives you a different type of stroke. You're working in it around and around. Um, so that's more loose, right? Yeah, you don't blame me for having all these brushes. It's more loose, especially if I'm doing pine trees and stuff. I like these wolf's hair brushes. If I'm doing if I'm doing bamboo, I tend to like this kind. It just gives me that little bit more control. If I'm looking for control, if I'm looking to get, oh, which state am I in? I'm in Florida. I'm in Central Florida, but I grew up in Asia. I was 7 years in Taiwan and 3 years in Korea. So sometimes I do Korean characters as well. I'll just look up, you know, oh my goodness, you're way far away in Washington. But sometimes I'll look up a poem or something, and then I'll sit there and just paint paint that. Um, this is more, uh, when you're a kid and you're block lettering. This is more like block lettering. And then there are a couple of different types of script within Asian painting. So sometimes I have to study the script because the script is a simplified version of these characters. So it might be and like that. So this part of the character right here, which stands for tree, meaning that it's a tree fruit, is telling you that that radical is from tree. And if I'm doing it script, it might look something like this. So it just depends on the look that I want, um, which types of brush I'm selecting, and which type of actual character that I'm painting. Now, sometimes I do what I call just a character flow. And so I will make up characters like this. And then oftentimes you'll find those in I will take a sheet of paper like this and I'll just do a bunch of these flow characters. They don't mean anything, but they're using the same brushes, the same ink, and the same technique as you would write characters in Chinese or Japanese. And then I tear these out and I use them in my collages. And I had somebody, but I have big paintings with flow characters, and I had someone who was studying Japanese, um, standing in front of one of my paintings and saying, "It looks like characters, but I can't quite tell what you're saying." And I said, "Well, that's because they're made up characters. That's why. It's a loosening up painting process that's using the same brushes, the same holding, the same technique, but it's all it's all my own sort of made up, right? Characters. So somebody would look at that and go, "Yeah, but it kind of looks like it should be characters." Yeah, I know, but it's just me making stuff up because I'm an artist and I'm allowed to do that. Right? Yep, yep, yep. And I have big paintings with flow characters in them. Lots and lots. Ooh, okay, this I need it. The nice thing is if this gets hard, this is that mounting the nori paste. You can re-wet it. So you don't have to worry if this gets hard, you just stick it in water and then you rinse it out. All right? Just so that you're aware of that. Um, I like to do these flow characters. I'll just do all kinds of stuff all over this piece of paper. And then when it's dry, I just tear it up into little pieces and put that into my collages. I do a lot of collage artwork. And I have, like right next to me here, this is a whole set of just papers that I was practicing on. And so I've just got tons and tons of these that I hang on to. And then see, there's some bamboo I was practicing. And then I'll just tear them and put them into my artworks, right? None of it goes to waste, but I love working with rice paper for that reason because I can take it and put it into, oh, you just started watercoloring in August. Awesome, awesome. Well, hopefully this is sharing some like wackadoodle way out there ideas with you so that you can see that it's a process, it's fun, enjoy it. Yeah, just let yourself be free, riff off of things like I do here and play it, don't take yourself too seriously. Now, I know people who are amazing artists, watercolor artists like Tom Lynch I met one time and he is amazing and his watercolor artworks are incredibly detailed, like ocean scenes and stuff like that. Stunning, absolutely beautiful. That's just not my technique. Right. Okay. You're far from serious. All right. If you're far from serious, then you'll probably learn some fun things from me because I can do serious, but I prefer to do very inspired, um, much more loose. Although my when you look at my collages, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that does not look loose, but it's slapping down a bunch of stuff and then having fun with it. Hey, Phil, thank you so much. Said great classes. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I figured it would be fun to do this on the night of the Super Bowl and hope that a few people would show up who might not be want to be watching the game, right? You'd rather play with paint and paint brushes